Let's pray. Guide, we beseech thee, Almighty God, members of this honorable house, that they may wisely deliberate for the good of this country and for the glory of thy holy name. Join me in saying the Lord's Prayer, please. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pray, be seated. Honorable members, this Parliament is now in session.
Item number 3, oath of allegiance or affirmation of a new member. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes.
The Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I extend Happy New Year to all the chambers. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the following minutes be taken as read. Minutes of the proceeding of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at Parliament Chamber, Mount Wellesley, St. George's, on Monday, December 1st, 2025, at 10 a.m., and on Tuesday, December 4th, 2025, and Friday, December 5th, 2025, at 9 a.m. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Parliament Chamber, Mount Wellesley, St. George, on Monday, December 1, 2025, at 10 a.m., and on Thursday, December 4, 2025, and Friday, December 5, at 2025, at 9 a.m., be taken as read. All those who are in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. The Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the minutes of the proceeding of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at Parliament Chamber, Mount Wellesley, St. George's, on Monday, December 1st, 2025, at 10 a.m., and on Thursday, December 4th, 2025, Friday, December 5th, 2025, at 9 a.m., be confirmed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at Parliament Chamber, Mount Wellesley, St. George, on Monday, December 1, 2025, at 10 a.m., and on Thursday, December 4, 2025, and Friday, December 5, 2025, at 9 a.m., be confirmed. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. The minutes are confirmed.
Item number 5, messages from the Governor General. Item number 6, announcements by Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, it's of course our first sitting for the new year, and I wish everyone a very fruitful, productive, happy, and healthy 2026. My announcements, the Honorable MP for the constituency of St. Andrew Northeast will not be with us today. The Honorable member is out of state, officially on parliamentary business. I also wish to inform this Honorable House that the 28th Conference of the Commonwealth Speakers and Presiding Officers Conference that was held in India was attended to by Senator Dr. Decima Williams, President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who delivered the keynote address in the Parliament of India. I also want to inform this Honorable House that on the 5th of February, as part of Grenada's independence celebration, the House of Parliament will host an activity celebrating the traditions of Grenada. We invite all MPs to, it's on the 5th of February, we invite all MPs to come and experience that particular activity. We hope to have steel pan music, of course, our national dish, and an included aspect of it would be the speaker's pot. Those are my announcements.
Item number 7, presentation of petitions. Item number 8, presentation of papers and reports from select committees.
The Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers and reports this Honorable House. 1, state-owned enterprises and statutory bodies statement of performance report for 2024. 2, Grenada Authority for the Regulation of Financial Institutions, GAFIN, annual reports and accounts for 2024. 3, Grenada Ports Authority financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024. 4th and finally, Grenada Authority for the Regulation of Financial Institutions, GAFIN, reports of the Supervisor of Insurance for the year ended 31st December 2024. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of Government Business. Honorable members, those documents are now laid in the House.
Item number 9, unopposed private business. Item number 10, questions.
Proceed. You may. MP for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you would observe that the chair of the Leader of the Opposition is vacant.
Yes.
At this time, she sent to say that she had gotten caught up in some traffic over the Granite Tank. So she intends to be here.
All
But
right,
obviously,
thank
she would miss this part.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask this question standing in my name
Yes.
of the Honorable Prime Minister.
Okay. Did you receive answers to those?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, so I am just trying to, if I can get some assistance from this device here, just to find the questions. Sorry. Mr. Speaker, I just want to see, while
Because, Honorable Member, I know in our last sitting, you requested it for it to be written. You said it was okay.
Yes,
Probably
Mr.
respond to the
Speaker,
written.
I did, but I have not seen the questions. I have not seen the answers.
Okay.
It hasn't arrived. But I just wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, that the questions that, these are like a recurring decimal, questions that are there.
Okay.
Because I had asked those questions And the responses came in November 27, 2023. And most of the questions, at least two of the questions, have not been answered as yet. And so I don't know if the Honorable Prime Minister would be able to answer it at this time, but I know the Honorable Prime Minister had asked for some information, but I say that by way of explanation, that these were questions already asked and responses given from the Prime Minister's ministry. So I think it would be not something very difficult to get the information that is there since that was done. So the date was 27th of November 2023, and I got some responses which just said that nothing was happening at the time and that they were looking at it. And I feel from 27th of November 2023 to now that this matter should have been put to rest. So I don't know what we can do. Would you want to say something on that, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, I think since in our previous sitting, you indicated that you don't mind having a written response, my sense is that the response may be forthcoming. So if you don't mind, I think you can leave a little time to receive the response, because quite often the member has to get his response through the ministries. So that's my take on it, Honorable MP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But just to refresh memories, I will seek your permission just to at least read the questions again. And if the honorable member for St. David and the Prime Minister would want to give some kind of commitment, I will entertain. If not, I would count on you to see how I can get responses on those questions. So just to, here. Yeah, it's this this one I couldn't get, so I'll just use this one. Thank you. So the questions are a three-part question on three different issues. Question number one asks, what is the state of progress of work on the Waltham land expansion project for the fishermen? If it has not started, can you please provide the reasons? If it has not started, can you please provide information on the project startup time? The second question, what is the status of the work at the Victoria Hotel, and how soon would it be ready for occupation by the police? And the third question is, what is the status of work on the Redmond Farm Road and the Monsignor Brothers Farm Road? These are the three questions, Mr. Speaker. So I place it in your hands to see if some resolution can be had in that matter.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable MP. Person Mark. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you just arrived and we are on questions. Yeah. Honorable MP Person Mark went before because you were not here yet. So I'm not sure if you want to intervene now or we should proceed.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I was wondering if someone was going to answer. I didn't hear the request she made, whether it's going to be deferred to another time or it's going to be answered and then the next question is going to be asked.
No, it's your time now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Speaker, thank you. I want to make reference to the list of questions on the order paper, and you would recognize quite obviously that some of those questions required an oral response, and in keeping with the rules of the standing order, which would have limited to 3 questions, in light of that, Mr. Speaker, I want to request that the questions that I'm going to ask orally, requesting an oral answer, the other questions be deferred, requesting a written response, because I can only ask 3 questions, according to the rules.
But my understanding of standing orders is that when the questions are submitted, you have to indicate that you are requiring an oral answer for those. Was it the case?
I would imagine, because if more than 3 would have been submitted, it would have been 3 for oral and 3, and the others for written. So, except there was an administrative error somewhere, but I'm going to proceed to ask 3 and then.
No. The standing orders require you to indicate
No, and that's what I'm saying. We can't answer
that you
whether.
require to ask these questions
Right.
orally.
So whether it did indicate or not, we would have to go to the request that was sent to you. We can't answer it by looking here.
Right.
So it would have been
And
indicated.
it wasn't my information that it was requested that the answers be submitted orally.
Right, and I'm saying if that was the case, Mr. Speaker, quite obviously, the administrative process would have picked up that only 3 questions by rule of the standing orders are allowed orally per person. So in that light, I assumed that there was an understanding that some of these questions were for written responses. But if you want me to ask it orally and you give me an exception to ask all of them here, Mr. Speaker, I was just trying to.
No, something is missing, Honorable. I'm repeating myself again, that just like the Honorable MP for St. Mark, when the questions are submitted, the writer of the questions must indicate that these questions require oral response. I'm saying to you, I didn't get that information before me. So when it went to whichever minister, that minister may not have that information that he or she requires to provide oral answers. That's the point I'm making. Right? So in advance, we have to indicate what sort of response we would like, how we would want the response, whether it be written or oral. So
And Mr. Speaker, I'm with you. I'm
yeah,
with you on
I
that,
suggest that in the absence of this, where there was no clarity,
Okay.
that you settle for written responses.
No, and I have absolutely no problem with written responses. Actually, I would prefer.
Okay.
Because of the details of the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable MP. You could proceed. Oh, member?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just seeking some clarification.
Yes.
What is a reasonable time to expect a response on questions asked?
I'm not sure. To me, a reasonable time would be for the next sitting. Usually, when the questions are submitted, you attempt to provide the answers in the next sitting of Parliament. So reasonableness has to do with when is the next sitting.
Only,
Huh?
only.
Yes.
Because that is my understanding as
Yes,
well, but
yes.
I am confused because of the way these things are handled. I am just wondering if there's another reasonableness that I am not aware of. So just so we clarify that
Yes,
here.
yes.
And so that I can go with an understanding that for the next
sitting, those
it's either
answers-
I receive responses before or by the next sitting.
Correct.
I will have my answers.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Usually
Mr.
the
Speaker.
answers are provided before.
Thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Item number 11, urgent questions under the provisions of Standing Order number 21, notice of questions. Item number 12, statements by ministers.
Proceed.
Item number 13, personal explanations. Item number 14,
Honorable MP for St. Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a matter for personal explanation. It is important that I raise this issue in this honorable House because a lot of it deals with what happened in this honorable House, not at a formal sitting, but at a meeting of the House Committee. And that goes back almost a year. 14th of February, that would have been a Valentine's Day. And we're fast going towards Valentine's Day again, Mr. Speaker. And it concerned the meeting of the House Committee. And I recall we looked at a couple matters. one of which was the issue of the vehicle. I wish we could put this to rest because it is obvious that those who really wanted it have it, and those who did not want it don't have it, and we on this side are the ones who don't have it, and we are managing, and we're not complaining. We just stood on a point of principle. But very recently, the member for the South was heard to say that at the meeting, which the member is not a member of that committee and was not at the meeting, how the member got that information, I don't know. And I have perused the minutes of that very meeting. And what the member is alleging is nowhere in that meeting, the minutes. And I'm sure none of us who attended that meeting have that erroneous recollection. So the member has been known to say that I even gave, say, what quality of vehicle I wanted. Mr. Speaker, I don't even know about quality vehicles. The only vehicles I know about are the ones that I have used, and if they served me well or didn't serve me well. And I don't know that there was much discussion on, as a matter of fact, I know I can categorically say that there wasn't much discussion on the type of vehicle. Somebody might have mentioned it, and it wasn't even thought necessary, and it's not in the minutes because I've perused it repeatedly. It is not there. And I need to clarify that because the attack has become personal. And it's even worse when it is untruthful. And it's even worse when the member is not a member of the committee and was not sitting there, and to invent those things to attack me on various forms of media. I think it is a shame and a disgrace to this honorable house that we can have a meeting. I have omitted to say much about the vehicles because I felt we had a committee in the highest level of this state. And I felt that by and large, we should keep what happened in the meeting as private as possible and share it with the parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, in this very house, I asked not so long ago, what happens with recommendations that the committee makes? And these are recommendations, from my understanding, these remain recommendations from the House until every member in this honorable House would have seen it. It means that the minutes and the recommendations would have had to have been laid in this honorable House in front of every member so that the members can say yea or nay, the final decision. That never happened. The minutes came very late, and I was looking for the date. It did not happen. And it happened after we got the information about the vehicles. So there were some hiccups. I didn't want to make heavy weather of it because sometimes this is a new thing that we get in vehicles, and mistakes can be made and errors. So I am not here to blame. But I am not asking the member to rise to say anything. But I think that if we come to an honorable house of this level, we should not go away giving people wrong information, Mr. Speaker. And I find this is very shameful and very disgraceful. And I trust that other committees, other members sitting in committees would not have the fear that their contributions would be first misconstrued, totally misconstrued, and secondly, that whatever is discussed here in this honorable house be taken out in the public, because all of us can take information out. But so far, I have refused to do it. And so, Mr. Speaker, I beg of you to use your good office. You, as the chairperson of the House Committee, you know what was said and what was done. So I will just leave it at that, but I find it very hurtful that I could be accused of saying what vehicle I wanted when the matter was just dropped on us unceremoniously. and there wasn't much discussion, and we let it go. We didn't say no, but we didn't fight for it either. And that is the truth in this honorable house. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, Honorable MP for St. Mark. I urge that members of this House be discretionary in how we respond, how we react, what we do and what we say. This is the Parliament, as the member said, the highest institution in our land. And let us, by way of our decorum, pay respect to that. Honorable, whose light is it? MP for St. Patrick West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to clarify a couple of things, with your leave. First of all, Mr. Speaker, the absence of something from the minutes is not necessarily an indication that such thing did not happen.
Just hold, Honorable MP. Leader of the opposition?
Yeah.
Are you rising on a point of order?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
And I wish to bring the House attention to Standing Order number 23. A member may make a personal explanation at the time appointed under Standing Order number 16, Order of Business.
Yes.
Although there is no question before the House, but no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may debate arise upon the explanation. I
That is
beg your
correct.
indulgence to observe the order.
That is correct. I wanted to get exactly what the member was saying,
Yes.
right, before I could have intervened.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I'm not here to debate any point, but simply to offer some clarification. Before the interruption, Mr. Speaker was simply stating that the absence of an item from the minutes is not an indication that that matter was not addressed. Because, Mr. Speaker, the minutes are not a transcript of the proceedings. And, Mr. Speaker, you chaired all of the said meetings.
Okay, so you're talking about the meeting of the House Committee?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so I urge you, Honorable Member, to refrain from it. Yeah?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to draw the House's attention
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Please do, refrain from it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Item number 14, motions. Item number 15, bills.
The Leader of Government Business?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce for its first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026. Thank you.
A bill which seeks to amend the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act, Chapter 84A of the Principal Act, to decriminalize the possession and use of cannabis in small quantities, to permit the use, handling, and cultivation of cannabis for medicinal use, therapeutic, scientific, and religious purposes under regulated conditions, to establish protective and rehabilitative measures for children and young persons, to provide for the regulation of such activities, to create new offenses and controls relating to the misuse of cannabis, and to provide consequential amendments to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act for the expungement of criminal records and discontinuance of pending proceedings in respect of minor cannabis-related offenses, shortly entitled the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026.
Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all the stages at this sitting. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all stages at this sitting. All those in favour, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. The Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. The Leader of Government Business.
Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026. Mr. Speaker, Grenada has embarked on a deliberate process of reform to modernize its approach to Grenada's drug control policy, recognizing the limitations of predominantly punitive and criminal justice-centered framework in addressing contemporary public health, social equity, and human rights considerations. Mr. Speaker, over several decades, the enforcement of criminal sanctions for minor cannabis-related offenses has contributed to social dislocation, barriers to employment and travel, and a disproportionate impact on vulnerable and marginalized communities without demonstrable deterrent effects. Emerging international and regional policy considerations. Thank you so kindly. Emerging international and regional policy considerations. Mr. Speaker, international and regional policy developments, including CARICOM's 2018 report, Waiting to Exhale, Safeguarding Our Future Through Responsible Social Legal Policy, through social local policy on marijuana, have underscored the need for member states within the region to adopt alternative approaches that emphasizes public health, education, prevention, and regulation rather than criminalization. Mr. Speaker, in Grenada, the impetus for reform has been further informed by empirical data, public consultation, and constitutional considerations. Analysis of cannabis-related arrests has shown that a significant proportion of cases involve low-level possession consistent with personal use, rather than trafficking of organized criminal activity. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, cannabis continues to be used informally for religious, medicinal, and private purposes, notwithstanding its Schedule I classification and prohibited status under existing local and international laws. So, Speaker, we now turn our attention to some global statistics and impact on the criminal justice system. Mr. Speaker, as a statement of fact, cannabis is the most commonly used illicit drug globally. In 2024, Mr. Speaker, around 224 million people aged between 15 to 64 reported using cannabis. And that's according, Mr. Speaker, to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime in 2025. This represents around 4.6%, Mr. Speaker, of the adult population worldwide. While most people, Mr. Speaker, who use cannabis do not experience adverse effects, it is noted that cannabis use is associated with a range of harms, including morbidity and mortality. According to Gadsden's report, 2022-2023, the social cost of cannabis use was projected to rise to $5.2 billion globally. More than half, some $2.8 billion of the projected costs were related to the criminal justice system. The cost on the global criminal justice system, including imprisonment, the cost of imprisonment, the cost of administering community supervision orders, and the impact, the negative impact, Mr. Speaker, on victims of crime. Mr. Speaker, we know, as a matter of fact, that cannabis is widely used here in Grenada, despite its classification. Like many countries globally, Mr. Speaker, there is relative cultural acceptance of cannabis locally, with many medicinal benefits attributed to the plant. Cannabis is also its central element, is also the central element of the Rastafarian faith as a religious practice. As I speak, we notice, as I speak, that we notice some of the Rastafarians are here this morning. Some of the Rastafarians are here this morning, along with learned consult, or chief medical officer, and and members of the Cannabis Committee. But, Mr. Speaker, there is a global change. That as a small island state that we must pay attention to. The availability of cannabis, Mr. Speaker, in the mainstream has been controlled for the most part due to its being classified as a Schedule I substance and illegal to possess. The view of cannabis, Mr. Speaker, continues to change globally, with many countries decriminalizing and legalizing for medical and even recreational use. Mr. Speaker, just in 2025, December 18 to be specific, Mr. Speaker, the United States President signed an executive order to reclassify cannabis to a Schedule III drug, moving from Schedule I to Schedule III, in recognition of its reported medical benefits and moderate low potential for physical and psychological dependence. This bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to decriminalize the use of cannabis and to decriminalize the possession of cannabis in limited quantities for medicinal and sacramental purposes. The most immediate anticipated effect will be increased availability for those who choose to use the substance. So Speaker, the cannabis policy statement, decriminalization, the government of Grenada 2024, articulates a national policy position criminalize possession of the substance. Mr. Speaker, I now propose some arguments for medicinal cannabis. Medical uses of cannabis are varied and evolving. And Mr. Speaker, as we decriminalize the substance, it affords us the opportunity to boldly take on research work into the substance so that we can learn and develop for future medicinal purposes. In its comprehensive review in 1999, Mr. Speaker, the Institute of Medicine concluded that marijuana may be modestly effective for pain relief, particularly nerve pain. That's 1999, Mr. Speaker. Almost 26 or so years after. It also helps to stimulate appetite for people with AIDS, wasting syndrome, and control of chemotherapy-related nausea and vomiting. Mr. Speaker, this is supported by other studies reporting that marijuana may have beneficial effects in treating multiple sclerosis-related pain, or pain spasm, appetite, mood, and management of other chronic symptoms. So, Mr. Speaker, the health effects of cannabis, or the use of cannabis, is well documented. And Mr. Speaker, only last year, 2025, I heard firsthand from surviving patients at the Caribbean Association of Oncology and Hematology Conference, which was held in Trinidad and Tobago, how the use of cannabis products were used to treat severe pains. Heard from patients, Mr. Speaker, how had it not been for the substance, having tried so many different medications with excruciating pains, how only after trying the substance, Mr. Speaker, they got relief. Talking about cancer patients. Cannabis intoxication. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are trying to do, Mr. Speaker, we open up the discussion as a matter of transparency so that you can see, Mr. Speaker, the positive and the negative impact of the substance. Because our policy, Mr. Speaker, is that we should be well educated on the use of the substance. And if we study and research and document and use in the right proportion, we can properly monetize the benefits of this important substance. The interest in and the use of cannabis stem from the psychoactive substance tetrahydrocannabinoid, THC, and the cannabinoids which it contains. Smoking, Mr. Speaker, is the most common and efficient means of ingesting cannabis. THC activates and modulates cannabinoids receptors in the brain, and it is responsible for the intoxicating effects, which include impaired motor coordination, euphoria, anxiety, sensation or slow time, impaired judgment, etc. Mr. Speaker, as I read this, I remember a discussion that we had last year in Trinidad regarding the same impairment of judgment on this. And it has to do, Mr. Speaker, with education and moderating the use of the substance, how it is applied. Cannabis-related disorders, Mr. Speaker, encompasses a spectrum of conditions ranging from acute intoxication to chronic use disorders and withdrawals, as well as a variety of substance-induced mental disorders. Harmful effects of cannabis. Cannabis exposure, Mr. Speaker, is well recognized as particularly harmful to certain high-risk groups, including the following: youths and young adults under the age of 25. The developing brain, Mr. Speaker, is more vulnerable, and it is said medically that the brain isn't well developed until an adult reaches the age of 25 years or thereabout. And so that's why, Mr. Speaker, it is always advisable that we proceed with caution, not just in the use of this, but young adults sometimes. I remember when I was much younger, I thought I knew everything, only to realize that as you grow older, you get wiser. Mr. Speaker, it is said that for young adults, the risk of dependency or young people, the risk of dependency is higher. It is argued that 1 in 6 youths, 1 in 6, has the propensity to, or may develop the propensity to become dependent on the substance. It may also create lasting cognitive issues, such as memory loss, ability to maintain or to pay attention, to be focused, and psychosis and schizophrenia and stuff like that. And that's why, again, Mr. Speaker, you would see in the legislative framework how it is patterned to avoid our young people from being from being exposed to the drug at too earlier age. And Mr. Speaker, that is one of the main reasons why the focus here is not on recreational use, but on medicinal use, scientific research, and stuff like that. Pregnant and breastfeeding individuals. And it is important, Mr. Speaker, that people are aware of this. Cannabis use is linked to low birth weight, weight of babies, if used by pregnant women. Impaired fetal growth, and THC exposure to infants, Mr. Speaker, potentially negatively affects brain development. For people who already have mental issues, Mr. Speaker, it's advisable that those with a history of psychosis and schizophrenia and so on, and anxiety and depression, that they consult a medical practitioner before using the substance. And older adults, age-related changes, existing health conditions, heightened risk for coordination issues, falls and heart problems and different problems. And those, of course, who have family history of substance use disorders, psychosis, and increase. And all of that, Mr. Speaker, is likely to increase risk to the individual. And so, Mr. Speaker, I now want to turn our attention to the content of the bill. The Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026 seeks to amend the Principal Act to give effect to these policy objectives: decriminalizing the possession and use of cannabis in small quantities, permitting the use, handling, and cultivation of cannabis for medical, therapeutic, scientific, and religious purposes under regulated conditions. Thirdly, establishing protective and rehabilitative measures for children and young persons. Fourthly, providing for the regulation of such activities. Fifthly, creating new offenses and controls relating to the misuse of cannabis. And finally, providing for consequential amendments to the Rehabilitation of the Offenders Act for the expungement of criminal record and discontinuance of pending proceedings in respect of minor cannabis-related offenses. Minor cannabis-related offenses. The structure of the bill. The bill, Mr. Speaker, represents an initial but significant step in Grenada's broader transition toward a public health-oriented, right-respecting, and economically informed framework for cannabis regulation. The bill, Mr. Speaker, contains 17 clauses and one schedule. Clause 1 provides for the short title of the bill. Clause 2 provides for the amendment of Section 2 of the Principal Act to revise the definition of the term cannabis and cannabis resin to align with modern scientific usage and to include provisions for medical preparations. It seeks to revise the definition of the term child and young person to support a new rehabilitative framework. Thirdly, it introduces new definitions for qualifying medical conditions and medical, therapeutic, or scientific purposes to clarify the scope of activities permitted under the bill. And also, generally restructure and revise other relevant interpretation provisions. Clause 3, Mr. Speaker, provides for the amendment of Section 4 of the Principal Act to exempt from prohibition the importation of cannabis-based medical or therapeutic products by persons certified by a medical practitioner as having a qualifying medical condition in accordance with prescribed guidelines. Clause 4, Mr. Speaker, provides an amendment of Section 5 of the Principal Act to permit the lawful production, supply, or offer to supply cannabis or cannabis resin for medical, therapeutic, or scientific purposes pursuant to a valid license or other lawful authorization. Clause 5, Mr. Speaker, provides for the amendment of Section 6 of the Principal Act to decriminalize the possession of cannabis and cannabis resin in small quantities for personal use by persons aged between age 21 years or older, as specified in the new 8th schedule. It also exempts possession for medical, scientific, or religious purposes from criminal liability. This clause, Mr. Speaker, also introduces a cross-reference to the newly inserted Section 6A. Clause 6, Mr. Speaker, provides for the insertion of a new Section 6A in the Principal Act, which establishes protective and rehabilitative procedures for children and young persons found in possession of small quantities of cannabis or cannabis resin. Rehabilitative procedures for children. Under this new section, Mr. Speaker, such cases are to be handled without arrest, charge, or a criminal record. Mr. Speaker, children under the age of 18 must be referred to the Child Protection Authority for assessment and, where appropriate, participation in counseling, education, or rehabilitation programs. And young persons, Mr. Speaker, aged 18 to 20 must be referred to a minister-approved counseling or education program. So, Mr. Speaker, underlying policy position is that of counseling and education to help people to understand the dangers and the use of the substance. Clause 7, Mr. Speaker, provides for the amendment of Section 7 of the Principal Act to exempt from prohibition the handling of cannabis and cannabis resin for medicinal, therapeutic, scientific, or religious purposes pursuant to a valid license or other lawful authorization. Clause 8, Mr. Speaker, provides for the amendment of Section 9 of the Principal Act to clarify that the possession of pipes, equipment, or apparatus fit and intended for the preparation or use of cannabis or cannabis resin for personal, medicinal, therapeutic, or scientific purposes or religious purposes, as well as religious purposes, shall not constitute an offense in law. Clause 7, Mr. Speaker, provides for the amendment of Section 10. Clause 9 provides for the amendment of Section 10 of the Principal Act to permit acts of preparatory to import, export, supply, or offer to supply of cannabis or cannabis resin for medical, therapeutic, or scientific purposes pursuant to a valid license or other lawful authorization. Clause 10, Mr. Speaker, provides an amendment of Section 11 of the Principal Act to exempt the cultivation of 4 or fewer cannabis plants from criminal liability and to deem such plants as cultivated for medicinal, therapeutic, or horticultural purposes. It also clarifies that multiple households on one premises shall each be treated as separate for this purpose. Clause 11, Mr. Speaker, provides for the insertion of 5 new sections: 13A, 13B, 13C, 13D, and 13E into the Principal Act. Section 13A creates broad exception for the use, cultivation, importation, exportation, production, supply, and possession of cannabis or cannabis resin under a valid license, permit, or other authorization for medicinal, therapeutic, scientific, or religious purposes. Section 13A also empowers the minister to authorize adherents of the Rastafarian faith to cultivate and use cannabis for religious purposes and to declare certain events as exempt events for religious observance. Section 13B, Mr. Speaker, prohibits the smoking or use of cannabis in or near public places, workplaces, or public conveyances, except where such public places are approved for the smoking or use of cannabis by order of the minister. Section 13C prohibits the smoking or use of cannabis on or near school premises. Clause 13. Section D, Mr. Speaker, requires the development of legislation to establish a regulated cannabis industry for medicinal, therapeutic, scientific, and religious purposes, and sets out key regulatory features to govern licensing, compliance, monitoring, and enforcement. Section 13E, Mr. Speaker, creates a fixed penalty regime for dealing with the offenses of public smoking under Section 13B. Instead of being subject to criminal prosecution, Mr. Speaker, a person who commits such an offense will be liable to a fixed penalty of $300 East Caribbean dollars. Clause 12, Mr. Speaker, provides an amendment of Section 21 of the Principal Act to delete Section 5, which is now redundant, and substituted for a new section, subsection 5, which clarifies that the provision of Section 21 do not apply to the possession of cannabis or cannabis resin that is otherwise authorized under the Act. Clause 13, Mr. Speaker, provides for the insertion of a new Section 53 in the Principal Act, empowering the minister, by order subject to affirmative resolution, to amend the 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th schedules. Clause 14 provides for the replacement of the existing second schedule of the Principal Act with a new schedule, revising the trafficable quantities of cannabis and cannabis resin. Clause 15 provides an amendment of the 5th schedule to insert therein the penalties for the newly created offenses under Section 13B, smoking cannabis in public places, and 13C, smoking cannabis on or near school premises, respectively. Clause 16, Mr. Speaker, provides an insertion of 3 new schedules, namely the 8th, 9th, and 10th schedules. The 8th schedule sets out the decriminalization, the decriminalized quantities of cannabis and cannabis resin. The 9th schedule provides definition and special provisions concerning cannabis, including the meaning of public place, public conveyance, and workplace, for the purposes of regulating the smoking or use of cannabis. The 10th schedule prescribes the form of fixed penalty notice issued under 13E. Finally, Clause 17. It provides for the consequential amendment to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act number 25 of 2017 to the extent specified in the schedule. The schedule to the bill sets out the particulars of the consequential amendment of the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act number 25 of 2017 and inserts a new section, 19A, which provides for the expungement of prior criminal records and the discontinuance of pending proceedings in relation to minor criminal offenses committed before the commencement of the Act, and a simplified application process before the Rehabilitation of Offenders Board. In particular, Mr. Speaker, this new section 19A specifies that convictions involving possession of up to 56 grams of cannabis or 15 grams of cannabis resin the cultivation of 4 or fewer cannabis plants, or the possession of related paraphernalia shall be deemed spent, expunged from the individual criminal record. In summary, Mr. Speaker, as we close. Mr. Speaker, just want to zoom in at 2 important impacts of this bill. The first is the economic impact. Mr. Speaker, there is the potential for the government of Grenada to generate additional revenues from licensing and taxation. And the development of the cannabis industry may contribute numerous jobs. And, of course, provides tremendous financial gains to the economy. Mr. Speaker, case in point for reference is that of Canada, who has a thriving industry and who has gained significantly from the enactment of legislation and regularization of the cannabis industry. The second impact, Mr. Speaker, is that of social justice and criminal justice. A core goal of many legislation is to address historical inequalities in drug enforcement. In our case, Mr. Speaker, 2 immediate effects one will see is reduction in arrest for people with the substance, caught with the substance. Mr. Speaker, we can reference the United States and Canada. There has been a massive decline in arrest for simple possession of the substance, which reduces the collateral consequences of criminal records and the impact it has on people's lives, the ability to be gainfully employed, to get employment, and barriers to travel because they have a criminal record, and other access, important access. Also, Mr. Speaker, this bill will help to eliminate the black market. Regulating the industry, Mr. Speaker, will have that impact. And as I said in my opening salvo, the reality is this substance is widely used in Grenada. So if we regulate it, we can control it. When it's not regulated, there's nothing you can control. And we dare argue that when you look at the data, the research information that we've been able to amass, alcohol poses a much more significant threat to young people and to people in general than marijuana. Mr. Speaker, regulated markets have successfully displaced a large proportion of illicit trade in places like Canada, the United States, Australia, and other developed countries. So, what we are doing here, Mr. Speaker, is important. That we eliminate or close off the black market as far as possible and seek to regulate the industry. And if I must say this also, the effect on alcohol on people's lives would have been much worse had it not been legalized in Grenada. Had it been a black market substance, the effect would have been much worse. In summary, Mr. Speaker, so let us use the opportunity to educate our people. Let us use the opportunity to develop the industry. Let us use the opportunity to research further into the substance and develop proper medicinal benefits for commercial purposes. So in summary, Mr. Speaker, the government of Grenada proceeds with caution, and this bill contains the guardrails necessary to protect our citizens, especially our youthful population. And you notice, Mr. Speaker, we sought to open up the discussions to look at the pros and cons of the substance, because we are not in the business of hiding anything from the population. We want them to understand how the drug has to be used and who should use the drug and why. Our policy of decriminalization, Mr. Speaker, will be paired with strict regulations to protect the youths and accompanied by a robust public education campaign and a strong enforcement against intoxication while driving. Medical use remains controlled, and recreational use, as per this bill, Mr. Speaker, is not permitted. The government prioritizes health and safety over short-term economic gains. Grenada has an opportunity to learn from the experience of other nations and continue crafting policies and laws that protects its people. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I now commend the bill for discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leader of Government Business. I now invite the MP for St. Andrew Northwest, St. Andrew Northwest, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026. And I do so as Minister of Mental Health, Wellness, and Religious Affairs, someone who has seen at close range how substance use, especially among young people, can affect emotional development, judgment, motivation, and long-term well-being. This bill represents a careful and responsible shift away from responses that rely on punishment and exclusion towards an approach that places mental wellness, protection, rehabilitation, and prevention at the center of our national drug policy. Mr. Speaker, we must be honest with ourselves. Despite prohibition, young people are already being exposed to and using cannabis under the legal age. Pretending otherwise does not protect them. What protects them is awareness, early intervention, and structured support. And that is precisely what this bill seeks to achieve. From a mental health perspective, Mr. Speaker, early and unregulated use can interfere with brain development, increase vulnerability to anxiety and mood disorders, and affect educational and social outcomes. This bill responds to that reality, but by ensuring that when young people come into contact with cannabis, the state's response is protective, supportive, and corrective, not damaging and lifelong impact. I'm particularly encouraged by the new section 6A, which ensures that children and young persons found in possession of small quantities of cannabis are not criminalized, but are instead guided into assessment, counseling, and education and rehabilitation. Children under 18 will be referred to Child Protection Authority, while young persons aged 18 to 20 will be referred to an approved program focused on education, coping skills, and mental resilience. Mr. Speaker, this is where awareness meets action. Excuse. This bill creates space for honest conversations, evidence-based education, and mental health support, especially for those most at risk, while sending a clear message that underage use is not ignored, normalized, or encouraged. At the same time, the bill strengthens protective barriers. Smoking or use of cannabis is prohibited in and around schools, public spaces, workplaces, and public conveyances. These safeguards are essential because protecting young people requires not only intervention after the fact, but strong prevention in the environment where they live, learn, and develop. The expungement provision also deeply important for mental health standpoint. Carrying a criminal record for a minor offense can fuel shame, anxiety, and stigma. By allowing for expungement, the bill promotes healing, reintegration, and a genuine second chance while keeping firm penalties in place for use and abuse. Mr. Speaker, this bill respects medical, scientific, and religious use under strict regulation, but it does so without losing sight of our primary duty to protect our young people, safeguard mental well-being, and strengthen families and communities. In supporting the bill, Mr. Speaker, we are saying clearly, we will protect our young people, we will address underage use with honesty and care, we will prioritize mental health and early intervention, and we will replace silence and stigma with awareness and structured support. For this reason, Mr. Speaker, with this protection firmly in place, I fully support the passage of the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment 2026. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable MP. I saw the light of the MP for St. Andrews Southwest. Before, so I now invite you, Honorable MP, take the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of this noble bill, of this meaningful bill. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that we are here today because of the actions taken by our government to put in place a committee that will guide the decriminalization and then the development of the cannabis industry here in Grenada. And so, Mr. Speaker, it hasn't been an easy task for the committee and for us as a government. It required sober thinking, research, visits to places that have gone before us, and a clear understanding of the approach that we should take in bringing us here today. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by saying this, that marijuana has a soul. And by this I mean that many people, and in particular the Rastafari movement, have given their lives for this plant. Many fathers would have left their homes never to return, and with no information on their whereabouts. Many children would have had to grow up in the absence of their fathers and not knowing who their fathers are. Mr. Speaker, there is a saying that a man must be prepared to give his life for a cause that is just and dignified. A man must be prepared to give his life for a cause that is just and dignified. For in so doing, he will never die, but live forever. And so the souls of the many Rastafari men and women who gave their lives for this noble but meaningful cause was not in vain. For our presence here this morning, discussing the bill for the decriminalization of marijuana is a direct result of sacrificing their souls over many years. I stand.
All right, Honorable MP, before you proceed, let me just make this announcement that we do not allow applause from the gallery. Please, so refrain from applauding. It doesn't matter how you feel about what is said here in the chamber, refrain. The practice is the applauding comes from the flow, right? I understand the urge to the feeling, but the practice in the parliament is that it's not allowed in the gallery. Please proceed, Honorable MP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But let me say this, Mr. Speaker. With all these Rasta men here present, I'm very happy for their presence. And I say to you, Rasta man, live up. Rasta man, live up. Don't give up. Today, Mr. Speaker, the cannabis industry is big. It is very big. Marijuana is being studied by some of the finest minds this planet has produced. I met a young Dominican, a young guy from Dominica, when I visited St. Vincent some years ago, or in fact last year, because every year St. Vincent has a seminar, a symposium on marijuana. And a team from our commission, including our chairman, the finest legal mind, Mr. Claude, was also present, together with a few Rasta men. And that young man from Dominica has an institute based in Jamaica with a team of young, bright Caribbean people. And they are doing research on the marijuana, the strain, the quality, and so on. So some of the finest minds, Mr. Speaker, are involved. Millions of dollars are spent every year in research on the medicinal benefits of this plant, while simultaneously millions are invested and millions of profit are earned from the same medicinal products of marijuana. Newsletters are produced every day on the development taking place in this industry. And of course, there is no reason why we in Grenada should not subscribe to them and read them and familiarize ourselves with this very important topic. Many young people are taking up employment in this industry, so that today, marijuana has its own lawyers. Peter, I think you are a marijuana lawyer. Today, Marijuana has its own pharmacists, it has its own doctors, it has its own engineers. So while we in Grenada, we're prosecuting and we're jailing our young men and women for this plant, others are happily making a mint out of it. So we must stop that. We must stop this persecution. It's not good for us. And Mr. Speaker, I want to just give you some figures about the great United States, which everybody referred to. The 2025 Vance finding, and Vance is the leading staffing agency for the cannabis industry in the U.S., revealed that the U.S. cannabis industry currently employs 425,002 full-time jobs. 425,000 people working in marijuana. And that in the same year, the national cannabis retail sales amounted to $30.1 billion. It's a $1 billion industry, Mr. Speaker, sir. So we have to get involved in it. And the long-term outlook for cannabis remains incredibly strong. And so today, Mr. Speaker, today represents a special moment in Grenada's political and economic history. Today marks a transformative milestone in our nation's journey towards a more just, evidence-based, and responsible approach to cannabis. For decades, our approach to cannabis was characterized by rigid prohibition, a system that was prone to causing lasting social damage and disproportionate harm to our young people in particular. And today, we move away from that era of prohibition, guided by the exhaustive consultations with the Cannabis Working Committee, our Ministry of Legal Affairs, and our fellow citizens. And Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize members of the Cannabis Committee here, if you don't mind. They don't have to applaud. But if I could ask them to take a bow, that would be fine. So the chair, please stand and take a bow. Ms. Lazarus, the PRO, please stand and take a bow. Ms. Antoine, another PRO, please stand and take a bow. Chief Medical Officer, the big brain, Dr. Son Charles, just like me, Cuban trained, well educated, please stand and take a bow. Officer Cohen, and Officer Cohen tell them that with this law, you have more work to do, eh? Some people say with this law, with this bill, the police will not work. Tell them you have more work to do. Our assistant permanent secretary, with responsibility for marijuana, for cannabis, yes, Natalie Williams, and the driving force behind all of this, the executive secretary, executive director of the Cannabis Commission, Sister Nandi Noel. Nandi, don't be afraid to stand. The truth be told, Mr. Speaker, is that these are the people. But I missed out the main man. We have in our midst, as part of the committee, a Rastafari. Rastafari from Chantimel, Selassie I, Jah! Ever living, ever faithful, ever sure. And they use their brain cells painstakingly, so Mr. Speaker. They spend hours thinking, reading, analyzing, and coming up with this bill that we have today, in consultation with a lot of people. We got calls from principals, from churches, from individuals, from all over the place, guiding the process and providing the input, the recommendation for us to bring us here today. So this has been a marvelous job, and I want to commend profoundly the Commission for its work in that regard. So, Mr. Speaker, today our government is evolving beyond the old ways of thinking. We are replacing a broken system of criminalization with a modern, well-regulated framework, one that prioritizes the health of individuals and the safety of our youth. While finally unlocking the therapeutic and economic power for all Grenadians. So in summary, Mr. Speaker, this bill we are presenting to this country today for our people is grounded in three main pillars. The first pillar is that of justice, social justice. It's a bill to rectify the past. We are providing amnesty and the expungement of records for cannabis offenses that fall within the specification of the bill. We believe that a past mistake should not be a permanent barrier to an individual's progress. Furthermore, we are upholding the constitutional rights of our Rastafarian community, recognizing the right to use cannabis as a sacred sacrament within their places of worship. As a Catholic, Mr. Chair, I use incense. We in the Catholic Church, we use incense. So the Rasta man has a right to use his ganja. Nothing is wrong with that. The second pillar, Mr. Speaker, is personal safety, personal rights, and public safety. And I want to make this point, Mr. Speaker, loud and clear, and I'm going to repeat it. This is a measured shift, not an introduction to an unrestricted market. It is a measured shift and not an introduction to an unrestricted market. We are decriminalizing marijuana to individuals aged 21 and above. We are also decriminalizing the possession of up to 56 grams of cannabis and 15 grams of cannabis resin for private use. We are also permitting registered household cultivation of 4 plants. And this is to ensure that adults can address their personal health needs in privacy without fear of arrest. Notwithstanding this, Mr. Speaker, we remain very vigilant. We have established a fixed penalty fine system for the public use of cannabis and created a rehabilitative framework for our youth. And I will speak more about that just now. And to those who intend to exploit our children, be warned. Be warned. The penalties for supplying minors with cannabis remain severe. And so we choose counseling over criminalization for our youth. But we also choose strict enforcement for the protectors. And Mr. The third pillar has to do with the creation of a Grenadian-first marijuana industry. We haven't reached it yet, but we're getting there. So looking ahead, our good intention is to build a national asset. And the Cannabis Commission, and through its work, we are going to design a legal industry, medicinal agro-processing and research that prioritizes local benefits in the Grenadian-first industry. And I want to say this, Mr. Speaker, that industry we want to create is part of our government's effort to expand and to increase and to widen the economic base of our country so that more employment opportunities can be provided for our citizens. and therefore the marijuana industry will serve as a complement to the traditional economic sectors like agriculture, tourism, construction. And that's the vision of this government. We first started with the creative economy as a new area of economic activity. Then we have the blue economy, another new area of economic activity. And so we are widening the economic base. And when we develop our marijuana industry, we're going to have another new area of economic activity that will increase our employment, our income, and our output, and make our country richer, and make every Ghanaian richer, so that there will be no more poverty in this country. There will be no poverty in this country. There will be no poverty in this country. Amen. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to spend a little bit more time on the real situation facing our young people relative to cannabis, and how this bill seeks to give attention and to protect our young people, in particular our young men. And we know what's happening to our young men these days. We're not giving them enough attention. They need the attention. So, Mr. Speaker, I have collected data on the number of marijuana arrests in Grenada for the period 2021 to 2025. And I will tell you, in 2021, there were 243 cases. In 2022, 115. Because you know all that, because you defended them. In 2023, there were 95. In 2024, there was 125. In 2025, we had 71. So put differently, over the last 5 years, there has been 649 arrests for marijuana in this country. And this figure, Mr. Speaker, underscores the objective necessity of the current bill in rectifying the social injustices of our past approach to marijuana in this country. But I want to go further, Mr. Speaker. Of that 649 cases, 11%, or 72, involve individuals caught with less than 56 grams. Mr. Speaker, could I ask for another 15 minutes, please?
Honorable MP, the allotted time to members is 15 minutes according to the standing orders. I now allow you to go on for another 5 minutes.
%46% is the same 56 grams we're talking about that we're trying to decriminalize. 72 cases. 46% of 300 cases were classified as simple possession. But here this, Mr. Speaker. 14%, which is 90 cases, involved children and young people. Under this new bill, these children going to jail. They would not be defended by Peter under this new bill. Under this new bill, these young people will be directed to counseling and rehabilitation rather than entering the justice system. Good? And Mr. Speaker, I want to refer to the kind of counseling that is expected, the kind of education that is expected. Apart from the fact that they will be taught about the negative impact of smoking at an early age, right? They will also be taught, Mr. Speaker, about the many professions associated with marijuana. And I want to refer to some of them. Cultivation and growing. You could be a grower, a harvest technician, you could be a director of cultivation, you could be a breeder, or nursery assistant, because it's an industry. Processing and manufacturing, you could be an extraction technician, an edible chef. You could be a packaging specialist or an infusion technician. Retail and dispensary, you can be a bud tender, a dispensary manager, a dispensary buyer. Laboratory and quality assurance, you can be a lab technician, a scientist, a quality control specialist. Distribution, logistics, and corporate, you can be a delivery driver, a marketing brand manager, a cannabis consultant. You could be an accountant. And there are some emerging and specialized roles. You could be a cannabis store operator. Yes, cannabis store operator, a data analyst, equipment technician. So there are many wonderful professions associated with marijuana. So while some of these jobs may require entry-level training, the majority of them require specialized training and knowledge in horticulture, in biochemistry, and of course, in legal compliance. So, Mr. Speaker, we are well taking care of our young people in this bill. And so, Mr. Speaker, given my 5 minutes, let me rush to close. And I want to say this, Mr. Speaker, in closing. This bill represents a paradigm shift, a change in the status quo, a break with the past, a new construct, which when passed in Parliament will become the new conventional wisdom regarding our attitudes and our approach and of our image towards marijuana in this country. And therefore I call on all of us Grenadians to become familiar with this bill. Discuss it among yourselves, for it will be the basis for the identification and development of a new area of economic activity that will increase our income, employment, and output, our gross domestic product. So the foundational work has been done. I once again thank the members of the Cannabis Committee for your good work. And the time is now for us all to work together to build a country that is just and that is fair, and to make Grenada a better place for all of us to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member for St. Andrew Southwest, and I now invite the MP for the town of St. George to make his contribution.
Thank you. Move it on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first let me commend the drafters and all those who worked on getting this bill to the House. I must say that it's long overdue, and to also say that it's, and when I say that I mean for many, many years, not last year or the year before. You know, and this has come as a result of the work of many people through the generations, not just us. So while we take credit for it, I agree with my friend from St. Andrew Southwest that we must pay tribute. I agree with you. I look behind me and I see many people who have worked very hard. I see my good and distinguished friend, Mr. Clouden. And I want to say something, that over the years, working with Mr. Clouden, my dear friend, Brother Anselm, I should say, former senator in this House, that he has always advocated, not a recent, you know, sometimes things come into style. It hasn't, for him, been that. It has been a dedicated years of work. In fact, in the court, I remember us having discussions about And I think that is what has happened, because I've always said that we've always followed, and there must come a time when we should lead. And unfortunately, in this case here, we have been lagging behind. So a lot of the commercial opportunities, the opportunities that may have existed years ago, because of the fact that we are always afraid to take actions. And I understand why sometimes, because of some of the agreements we had, some of the regulations with finance and all of that. It is difficult. So I'm not suggesting that it's easy for anybody to do it. But all I must say is that we have lagged behind, but I commend what we have today. And rather than saying we've come to the end, I will submit to you, to all of us, it is only the beginning. And yesterday I received a call from a gentleman, and it's an interesting conversation. He said, well, if everybody could have an ounce, where are we getting it from? It takes us to another level, but that's not for today. It takes us to a different level, because we're now talking about another level of, but incremental steps. As the Chinese say, a journey of 500 miles begins with but one step. So let us take the steps, celebrate it when we take it, but never become complacent in believing that this is the end of the road. This is merely the beginning. And because of the fact that we're lagging behind, you may have to run faster than you can imagine. So I want to commend all my brothers I see here. The Rastafarians, I don't want to call names because I have to call all the names. My brother Claude, the people in the PR, the people in the committee. I want to join my friend in commending them for the work. And the fact is, the passage of this legislation is the result of that we see behind us. But also, we must look at the history and understand where we've come from. Because cannabis was not always criminalized. It was not always classified as a dangerous drug. In fact, the evidence will tell you that there was a time back in the early 20th century when it was legal, and our ancestors used it for several reasons: relaxation, medicinal purposes. So understand that this was made illegal by persons who come. And in fact, there's some evidence to suggest that it was made, the lobby for it, and there's these lobbies. These things just didn't start. There's what's called the alcohol lobby. Remember, you have an alcohol industry. And that alcohol industry, it was suggested, I'm not sure, I haven't studied the subject, were part of the people who made cannabis illegal so that cannabis does not compete with the industry. Because you see, alcohol requires big capital investment. So the people that can invest in alcohol are different from the people who can invest in cannabis, mainly people who can plant, the farmers, the workers, the peasants. So there is a history that we must understand as we move forward. Our ancestors used it as a hope. I remember a gentleman in Belmont, don't want to call names, an old guy was in his 90s at the time who was using cannabis back in the 1970s. So, Mr. Speaker, the fact is we are moving towards a new period, and I agree with my friend on that. And what was the result of this? The result of this was mass imprisonment of working people, criminal records, and I won't be long because much has been said, stigmatization of the Rastafarian movement and its use of cannabis in sacrament. I remember years ago, Rastanan, God bless his soul, was around at the time, representing the group when the tabernacle was in River Road, when the police stormed into the tabernacle. And without absolute disregard for the religious rights. And we had to be fighting that in court. I remember Mr. Claude in many of these cases making the point. I remember the issue of cutting of the locks. I remember my dear brethren from St. Vincent earthquake, client of mine who was the first person that we stopped the cutting of the locks because it was a Rastafarian. And up to this day, I don't think we ever got a judgment on that case, Mr. Claude. It was Justice Benjamin at the time, but at least they stopped cutting the Rastafarians here at Her Majesty's Prison. So it has been a struggle, as you indicated, my brother from St. Andrew Southwest. And the working class was disproportionately affected by this. Disproportionately affected. And the CARICOM report, I think it was mentioned by one of my colleagues, the CARICOM report in a big way gives us a lot of data, and I suggest every one of us get hold of the CARICOM report, because what we're doing here is as a result of the work of a lot of the specialists in this regard, and the report overwhelmingly, in fact unanimously, suggested that we do what we are doing here today. So I suggest we get a copy of the report, read the report. It gives you a lot of background and a lot of data. So where are we today? The fact is that the vast majority of our people, I was surprised when we looked at the data in 2018. The data in 2018 suggests that 61% of Grenadians supported decriminalization. Now I saw it, I was actually surprised, because I thought, and we were in front of many of the islands in terms of acceptance of where we are today. And it tells me that the majority of our people have come to the position in supporting where we are today. In fact, in looking at the CARICOM report, it says there is now overwhelming support for law reform, moving away from the prohibition on cannabis and consequent criminalization. This holds true not only from the data, but the many prominent persons and groups that have lent their voice to this cause from all walks of life, including church leaders, magistrates, judges, social workers, educators, doctors, chief justices, DPPs, members of parliament, senior members of the bar. All of these groups, and I remember us having a consultation, and there were a couple of colleagues here today who were there with the Catholic Church, with the bishop of the Catholic Church, he's still bishop, where that consultation involved a lot of these people. Sister Sandra Ferguson was involved in organizing that many years ago. So today's action is more driven by the people rather than led by politicians. So we must give credit to the people who have brought us here today rather than the politicians. So Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, that the fact is, whereas in 2018 we had these numbers, I believe the numbers are much higher today. We are 7 years on. But we must continue to talk to our people on the issue. Do not just come to a parliament, pass a bill, walk away believing, bouncing our chest, believing we've done something good. Because while we're calling for reform, the Commission accepted that there can be some psychological issues with some young people. So I'm happy that the law provides for that. It talks about counseling. It talks about not having people drive while the use of cannabis. That research is ongoing. We must bear that in mind. And bear in mind that we must convince all of our people by our actions. This here today is not a call to everybody to smoke weed. This is not an announcement. I mean, I want to pay tribute to the Rastafarian movement because to them it's a sacrament. We must pay tribute to that also. But what we must do is that people who want to smoke and fall into the categories that are here should not be criminalized. And I think that is the main purpose of the bill. In other words, we're not saying to parents, because we have to understand the role, how parents see this. We have to say to them, we are not in the parliament today saying everybody in Grenada should go out and smoke. That is not the purpose of the bill. The purpose of the bill is to ensure that people who are desirous and whose parents have no difficulty with that, because we're talking about young people over 21 now, but under 21, there is none of that being encouraged. And in addition to that, a lot of the old theories of cannabis has been debunked. A lot of the old theories of it being a gateway drug, of it, sending people mad, of encouraging crime. In fact, and Mr. Claude said, it's the only crime we know associated with cannabis use in the courts was the use itself. There was nothing that led them Alcohol, on the other hand, and it was suggested, let me tell you, in terms of causation, alcohol is the worst drug. It leads to all, and Sister Delma will tell you that in terms of incest, men getting home drunk in the night, doing all kinds of nonsense in the house, beating wife, beating girlfriend, alcohol has been the cause of that, but we've taken our focus off of that, and we are up to a time, we're talking now about cannabis. So, my dear members of parliament, I expect that we will get bipartisan support. I know on this, from my side, we support because we did present a bill to parliament years ago, and we did have consultations when I was in another organization, and therefore we presented this bill. I remember sitting right there having the bill presented, so I do expect that there will be well, I am prepared to take credit for it. I have no difficulty taking credit for it. If the credit is mine, well, let that be. I have no shame for that. But so I expect that we as a house will do it. But the one thing I would have liked is if when bills, and I must say, Mr. Speaker, when bills like these are being presented, that we are brought into the picture before we get here, so that we can understand all of the consequences and able to tell our communities. So I support the bill, but quite frankly, the only briefing I've received is the briefing that was given here today. I would have liked to have a discussion, and the truth is, when you do that, and this is my pitch again for bipartisanship, when you do that, I can maybe add something to it with my experience over the years, or lack of it, you never know. The point I'm making is, as we go forward as a parliament, let us try to understand that there are things that we can agree on. And this, for me, is one of them. But I want to say something with respect to the Rastafarian community. That, and my brother said it, over the years they have been discriminated against, is the word I'll use. You mentioned Rastafarians who have lost their lives for it, discriminated against for it. Their kids cannot attend schools, certain schools, because of the fact that they're Rastafarians. And I think, the police need to be educated on this issue, because there is, and regardless of what we say, there is something in the culture of how they operate that says that when they see somebody looking like that, there is some kind of crime being committed or about to be committed. I think we need more education in our national security apparatus on this issue. But I want to say something, that because of the discrimination over the years, maybe going forward, and I've had this discussion with several of them, there needs to be some preference. And I know people don't like preferential treatment, preference given on the commercial side when that time comes, because of historic wrongs, so that in the commercialization, in the work to get the cannabis industry up and running, that the Rastafarian movement should be given some serious consideration. But I want to say to my brethren, it will require the Rastafarian movement coming together. They are stronger together, and I know there are different Rastafarian denominations, if that's the word you use, but certainly coming together as a group will assist in getting more out of politicians. You approach politicians united, you get more than if you approach divided. That is a rule. So therefore, I urge you to play your part in getting that done, but I urge our governments, whoever these governments are going forward, to work to assist in correcting some historical wrongs that took place. So to the Rastafarian community, I hope that you're able to come together and develop programs. We're far behind, we're lagging behind, but we should develop programs in order to get going. And in addition to that, to the government, all governments, that there is a group of parents out there that are worried. And they're worried because of what exists. We are in the courts every day. I see magistrates and judges And I raise this because it was raised in the context of alcohol use and other issues, that we need to invest more into positive programs for young people. We need to invest more so that when we are in the courts and we have problems, you refer to sending kids to counseling, sending them to programs. There needs to be more investment in that so that we do not have more alienated youth going forward. And I mean, just yesterday, there was a young man, and myself and the chief magistrate was talking about what can we do with him. He has a mental problem. And you can't send him to Her Majesty's prisons because it will be a danger to himself and to the other prisoners. Because if he damages another prisoner, it is you, the state, that will have to pay the compensation for whatever injuries, including death, that could be caused. Let us sit as a people and find solutions to some of these problems of mentally challenged people. There is no secure facility in Grenada for mentally challenged persons who end up in a criminal justice system. I remember Judge Mitchell. He died recently. He was on the Court of Appeal, and a gentleman came in front of him, and the gentleman was obviously mentally challenged. That is about 15 years ago. And he asked the DPP, Mr. DPP, this man should not go to Her Majesty's prisons. He's mentally challenged. And the DPP says there's no place. He said, I give you a month to find a place for this man. The DPP came back a month after, and the judge said, Mr. DPP, have you found a place where this man can be safe and he cannot affect the safety of others? And the DPP said, no, my lord, we have no place. And the judge looked at the prisoner and said, you are free to leave, sir. You are now his problem, not my problem. In other words, we need to find space for that. And it may sound like sometimes we don't like to approach these issues because it's issues affecting poor and working people. We need to find solutions. So I just thought I'd make that comment here today because the magistrates always say to me, Mr. David, you're in Parliament. You're part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. Mr. Speaker, just 1 minute to wrap up, if I may. Yes, so I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, I support this, I'm sorry for saying we, I support this bill. Well, myself and others who support this bill. I cannot speak for all members of the House on this side, but I do believe that while it appears as though we've achieved a lot, there is a far way to go. As I said, the gentleman who called me yesterday said, Peter, where is the man going to get the 56 grams from? And that question has to be answered. I know we will find an answer, there will be more. The point I'm making is, as we go forward, we will have to find solutions to problems that will arise. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, I must say that the experience of the other islands, because remember, Antigua, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, all of them have passed legislation, and I'm sure the Prime Minister will agree in his discussions with those leaders in the other islands. There have been no rise in problems, as some people suggest, will occur. So we have the evidence from the other islands, we have the evidence from all over, countries all over the world. I think this bill would lead to something good. In fact, I think this bill can cause us to start thinking more. So as the member said, the member for St. Andrew Southwest, and I agree with him in his propositions, that we need to think now, how do we go forward with this? I do not believe there's an easy way. We have a small country. It's not going to be an easy solution, but I think if we all come together and not try to achieve the world in 1 minute, but move in incremental steps as we are doing today, I think we'll make it. And myself and my learned colleague had a bet in the court. He didn't win the bet, but we split it 50-50. But I congratulate you. I'll tell you all the story off the record. But I want to congratulate you, the members of the Rastafarian movement, members of the committee, all of you. I want to congratulate all of you for work well done to get us here. And I hope the public understands that what we are trying to do is to help, to manage this issue. And I hope they come behind us on this issue. But we must continue to educate our people on these issues and not just leave our discussions in the halls of this parliament. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, MP for the town of St. George. And from where is it? The MP for the constituency of St. John. I now invite you to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much. Before I begin my intervention, I want to take this time to say a special morning to my constituents. I want to also take the time to say a special good morning to the people of the Rastafarian community who has joined us here this morning, and to wish everyone in this honorable house a very happy new year. It is our first sitting for the year 2026, and so I anticipate that we would have a very robust and interesting sittings as the year advances. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026, not as a fashionable reform, not as a political stunt, but as a serious, evidence-based, evidence-led, morally conscious adjustment to a policy space where Grenada has too often relied on punishment while families have cried out for treatment. This bill, Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, is built on a simple truth. We cannot police our way out of a public health challenge. We can police trafficking, Mr. Speaker. We can police exploitation. We can police violence. But when it comes to low-level possession and use, criminalization has often produced social harm without measurable deterrence, barriers to employment and travel, Mr. Speaker, stigma, and a justice system clogged with matters that did not meaningfully advance public safety. That is precisely the policy context reflected in the government's briefings, the limitations of a punitive approach, and the shift towards public health, prevention, rights, respecting regulation. Mr. Speaker, this bill does 5 major things for us, cleanly and deliberately. The first being decriminalizing small quantities for adults while maintaining strong controls against trafficking and harmful conduct. The second major thing this bill does, Mr. Speaker, is permit medicinal, therapeutic, scientific, and religious use under regulated conditions, and the leader of government's business through you, Mr. Speaker, have eloquently expressed those. This is not a free-for-all, but it is rather a framework. The third thing that this bill does, Mr. Speaker, is protects children and young persons through diversion, not arrest, handled without a criminal record. The fourth thing that this thing does, Mr. Speaker, is create new controls on misuse, including public smoking restrictions with a fixed penalty and strict protection around school premises. And finally, fifth, it provides expungement, a lawful mechanism, Mr. Speaker, to correct the historic consequences of minor cannabis convictions, including discontinuance of pending proceedings of that type. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak directly and respectfully to our Rastafarian community. For generations, Mr. Speaker, the sacramental use of cannabis was treated not as faith, but as crime. Spiritual practice was criminalized, conscience was prosecuted, and many of our Rastafarian brothers and sisters bore the brunt of stigma, harassment, and arrest for living their beliefs. Mr. Speaker, on a light side of things, what the honorable member for St. Andrews Southwest did not tell you, I believe at one point in his time he was a Rasta. And I hope that it was not as a result of this stigmatization that he decided to cut his dreads and become a bald. Mr. Speaker, this bill acknowledges a truth long denied. that the use of cannabis within the Rastafarian faith is religious, not recreational, spiritual, not criminal. By explicitly recognizing religious use, Mr. Speaker, cultivation and exempt events, this Parliament says clearly, your faith is not unlawful. I'll reiterate that. Your faith is not unlawful, and that recognition matters not just legally, Mr. Speaker, but symbolically. This House cannot undo the pain of the past, Mr. Speaker, but today it can choose justice over silence. And so we must be honest, Mr. Speaker, about our political history. We agree and we accept, Mr. Speaker, and I agree with the member for Tongue of St. George, Tongue of St. George, that reform did not begin today, or a few years ago, or a few weeks or months ago. Years ago, Mr. Speaker, under a previous administration, there was public discussions and even a public signaling around cannabis decriminalization. I remember committees were spoken of, intent was expressed, Mr. Speaker, but intent alone does not and did not change law. Those efforts ultimately, Mr. Speaker, materialized to naught. What makes this moment different is not rhetoric, Mr. Speaker, it is delivery. This government, Mr. Speaker, has spoken clearly. It has also legislated clearly. It has faced, Mr. Speaker, the complexity, the controversy, and the consequences, and brought a bill to this House. That is the difference, Mr. Speaker, between gesture and governance. But, Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, I wish to speak also about a personal truth. Substance misuse is real. And let me be very clear, Mr. Speaker, supporting this bill does not mean denying the risk of cannabis misuse. I do not speak about this reform from an abstraction or from theory. I speak now, Mr. Speaker, as a sister. My brother has been medically diagnosed with drug-induced psychosis for roughly about 8 years. I have watched up close, Mr. Speaker, what substance misuse can do to a mind, to a family, to a community, and overall to hope. I have seen the fear, I have witnessed the instability, and the helplessness of loving someone while watching them unravel. So when I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, in support of this bill, it is not because I believe cannabis is harmless. It is because I know that criminalization does nothing for someone who is already struggling. You cannot arrest someone into recovery. You cannot imprison someone into wellness. So this bill finally separates, Mr. Speaker, use from misuse and justice from treatment, and that distinction also matters too. Mr. Speaker, if we are also honest with ourselves, the greatest failure of the old system was not enforcement, but it was neglect. After Hurricane Ivan, Mr. Speaker, I was 7 going on 8. The Carlton Home, Grenada's only rehabilitation facility, was destroyed. And for many years, and then I think later on there was a fire as well too. For many years, Mr. Speaker, it remained absent. It was not replaced, it was not rebuilt, it was not prioritized. It took Grenada Cooperative Bank, Mr. Speaker, not the state, not the administration at the time, to begin mobilizing financing efforts towards rehabilitation infrastructure. And while in 2018 and 2019, for example, we heard promises, including references during budget debates. We were in another place at that time in the upper house. That work would have finally commenced on proper mental health and rehabilitation facilities. The reality is that persons suffering from substance misuse remained underserved. Mr. Speaker, I also want to bring light to a stark reality in that of the Radun Block, for example. The Radun Block, Mr. Speaker, is a psychiatric and mental health stabilization unit designed to provide short-term, acute, specialized care for persons experiencing severe mental health crisis, including psychosis. After Hurricane Ivan again, Mr. Speaker, that stabilization unit that is supposed to and was housed at the General Hospital was moved to Mongi, the mental health facility campus in Mongi, as a temporary move to bring some sort of normalcy to hospital daily routines and operations. But what was a temporary move, Mr. Speaker, it became permanent. And so today, what you see happening now, we have a Radun unit that was not designed to house persons who might be psychotic. They cannot hold them for more than 2 weeks. So the treatment is inadequate. The location is not suitable for them because they should not be mixing with other inmates that have much more mentally challenged problem and illnesses. But that's where we are today. And in addition to bringing this bill to Parliament, Mr. Speaker, it took this government, how much years now I've gone? About 22 years to finally address having a proper rehabilitation facility for young men and women. I do not hear, we have not discussed rather, any plans of having that block housed in the new hospital that some people call pie in the skies, Mr. Speaker. But it took this government to ensure that we prioritize having better care at a temporary stage, to ensuring that they have proper suited beds for the inmates, the patients there, and to ensure that we can do rehabilitation work on the Mongi Mental Hospital to ensure that we have enough spacing for those vulnerable citizens. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill does not pretend to solve that alone, but it finally aligns the law with the reality that treatment, not punishment, must be the center of our response. And for the first time, this government has put their monies where their mouth is. This is not coincidence. This is policy coherence. So, Mr. Speaker, we also hear that there have been attempts, discussions to bring in this much-needed bill to be laid in this honorable house. Grenada heard the talks before through many personalities under various leadership. The difference today is that this government has brought the matter to Parliament with a coherent legislative package. It has law, schedules, offenses, and protections and expungements. The difference is not who spoke the loudest, Mr. Speaker, it is who delivered. And so with all of this, Mr. Speaker, some may come with two familiar arguments. Some may say this will encourage use, or others may say this is too soft. But I want to ask this House, Mr. Speaker, through you, what encouraged misuse more? Compassionate diversions and education, or decades of stigma and silence? What is softer? Creating a clear penalty for public smoking and strict protection for schools, or clogging our courts with minor possessions while the real traffickers adapt and evolve? This bill, Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, is discipline through new offenses and fixed penalties. It is dignity, Mr. Speaker, through religious recognition and expungement. And Mr. Speaker, it is dignity through and direction towards regulation, treatment, and a modern framework. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill because I want fewer young men and women entering adulthood with a record for a minor offense, and more young people entering adulthood with education, with guidance and protection. I support this bill, Mr. Speaker, because I believe faith must be respected, not criminalized. And I support this bill because I know what substance misuse can do to a family. And I refuse to pretend that punishment is treatment or that stigma is prevention. And I support this bill, Mr. Speaker, because I know that we have a responsibility, and that this is the House's opportunity to say, we are governing with evidence, with conscience, and with humanity. And so I want to commend my colleagues on this side of the House for not going down into history as revisionist historians, but as action-oriented historians and parliamentarians. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MP for the constituency of St. John. And I think it's the light of the MP for St. George Northeast. Please take the floor, Honorable MP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I gladly do so. And Mr. Speaker, after listening to the presentation of my colleague, sister, and member for St. John, it tells me that we are indeed making the right decision, that the future of the country understands all of the mistakes of the past related to this specific legislation, and that we are prepared essentially to correcting it and to rewriting that injustice against various communities. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026, a bill that, in my view, seeks to modernize our legislation, as mentioned earlier on by earlier presenters. It helps to correct the injustice of the Rastafarian community. Mr. Speaker, for years, and not just in Grenada, but the world over, the Rastafarian community has endured that injustice, the abuse, and the disrespect, Mr. Speaker, for their faith, their belief, and their call for the herb internationally to be recognized and respected. And today, by the passage of this bill, Grenada is attempting to right that wrong and join our colleague nations around the world in recognizing the Rastafarian community's right to use and work with marijuana or cannabis, as it is titled in this bill, for their religious sacrament. And for this, Mr. Speaker, we are eternally grateful to be standing on the side of the Rastafarian community. Mr. Speaker, this bill, most importantly, helps to lay the foundation, and you heard it from the member for St. Andrew Southwest and the Minister for Economic Development, for Grenada's first regulated cannabis industry. We believe this industry has the potential to serve two critical national objectives. First, it can create a new and viable sector to our economy, generating the employment, as mentioned, entrepreneurship and investment. And second, It opens significant opportunities to harness the medicinal and therapeutic value of cannabis through investment in local research and development and the creation of value-added products. And I want to spend some time just speaking about it because we heard earlier on by presenters about the effects and some of the legislation. But in my preamble, I want to talk about where we need to go because we need to understand the vision as to why we are passing this legislation. We are not just doing this because it is opportunistic. It has a genuine, deep purpose to be able to build out the future for Grenada's economy and expand our opportunities for our people. So with the right regulatory framework, Grenada can position itself to begin to market high-quality medicinal cannabis products for export. That is where the value is going to work for the Rastafarian community. Because, Mr. Speaker, as much as they use it for religious purposes, they must have access to training, how to take it now, commercialize it, and benefit, so that they can build their homes. They can continue to educate their children in communities of Rastafarian practice, and continue to build their future as they see it. Grenada must not be a place where we are stifling people, because, Mr. Speaker, as the word immigrants is very popular in the world today, it is something we in Grenada know fully well that we are built upon. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, people who do not subscribe to the norm as everybody else still deserve a right to live, to work, and to build Grenada. So, Mr. Speaker, there are possibilities. So phase one is a process of amending the legislation as we are doing now, which speaks to establish clarity, safeguards, and legitimacy. And phase two will then require us to build out our scientific, regulatory, and commercial capacity needed to prepare Grenada for the future in this regard. So I want to start off quickly by looking at the overall purpose of the bill. As mentioned, historically, Grenada cannabis laws have focused more on punishment rather than outcomes. That approach, Mr. Speaker, has overcrowded our justice systems and the jails. Simply put, it has also led to the damage of some young people and limited opportunities for Grenadians involved when they get a criminal record. And when we talk about the damage, it is not to say that the state is responsible for the misuse. It is to say that the state is not doing enough to treat with the misuse, and therefore the neglect and the need to punish and criminalize people when they misuse it was the injustice that we needed to overcome. And so, as it relates to Section 6, and in particular the new section, Section 6A, it speaks to how this bill is going to treat with the decriminalization and the rehabilitation of people who get caught with the particular substance. Mr. Speaker, this, we believe, is therefore a measured and controlled approach to the whole issue of cannabis. Not a free-for-all or open sepulchre. We are not telling people just go out and smoke free. This has nothing to do with people and the urge to use it for recreational as opposed to medicinal. What we are saying is that we need to put the regulatory framework in place to take it off the black market and put it in something that is now recognized, and we could be able to benefit from it. And there are two areas I want to just highlight of the bill as I move forward in this discussion. One is that right now, at present, when a child encounters cannabis, there is no clear legal requirement for education, counseling, or rehabilitation. And so what this amendment seeks to do is to help correct that initial gap under Section 6A, where children and young people found in possession of small quantities are not arrested, charged, or burdened with a criminal record. And this is important, Mr. Speaker, but the bill doesn't stop there. It also addresses the historical pattern or mistakes of the past by criminalizing young people or people in general who were caught with small quantities and who hold a criminal record. It will expunge it. And it is doing so, Mr. Speaker, under Section 17 and Section 19A, of the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. And Mr. Speaker, it's important that we highlight that, because on one hand, we are talking about how do we go forward, and on the other hand, the bill is also seeking to take people who themselves were victims of this gap and bring them in line as to where we expect and intend them to go, Mr. Speaker. Cannabis, essentially, what we are seeing, is no longer seen as a dangerous drug. We need to bring it under the laws to control it so that people do not have the unfortunate situation of its misuse. So it addresses that long-standing discrimination, Mr. Speaker has mentioned, by recognizing the religious rights of the Rastafarian community, Section 13A. It allows for regulated cultivation and sacramental use, Mr. Speaker, and permits the declaration of exempt religious events. The only thing I would add, Mr. Speaker, is that while the legislation should not say this, but we as a nation must make a public apology to the Rastafarian community. And that is something I think we could continue to speak on. Mr. Speaker, as mentioned, we still keep the sections of the bill that prohibits smoking or use in public spaces, workplaces, and public transport. With a fixed penalty system, you heard the leader of government business talking about it. Section 13B addresses this, Section 13E also, and Section 13C strictly protects school premises and surrounding areas with serious penalties. So it's critical. So it's not, again, an open sepulchre. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, in talking about this bill, we recognize, as mentioned, that there may be questions that families, parents may have over the whole situation. It's new to some people, and therefore we need to express some measure of caution. And we will see challenges when implementing. It will require the education, as mentioned, resources, and key thing, oversight. So, in relation to the point that the member for the Tongue of St. George made, Mr. Speaker, through you, I want to take him up on it, because I think too often we come here, we pass the legislations, and we don't do enough as parliamentarians to really carry home our role and responsibility beyond just passing a legislation. To the honorable member for St. Mark as well, you know, we often go on a lot of trips. And when we go on those trips, the expectation is that we speak about the region, and recently we were in Trinidad, and we talk about how we can partner. So I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, through you, there is an opportunity here. Let us create, working with the existing committee, an oversight and impact commission now at the level of Parliament or otherwise, right, to do one of three things. One, let's monitor enforcement, right? Let's also have a review system for youth referrals and the expungement outcomes. Let's look at that. Let's look at the data as to whether or not if it is working. Let's ensure that we publish annual public reports on health, social, and economic impacts. And let us also seek to recommend legislative adjustments based on new data that might become available in the future. Let's commit to that. And we could also go further and say, as the issue that was mentioned by the member of the Tongue of St. George, let us talk about a cannabis social equity and education fund. So when we talk about the cannabis industry, it must not be abstract to what is happening. It must play the part also to safeguard and preserve the safety of our young people by ensuring that we have greater drug education in schools and communities. Let it also be able to fund subsidized counseling and rehabilitation services in vulnerable communities. Let's commit ourselves to thinking and talking about that. And let us also see if we could get grants provided for individuals whose records, for example, got expunged and may now need a new start in life to move forward. Let's talk about how we can make them industrious, notwithstanding that they've had that difficult past and they are ready to go in the future. So, Mr. Speaker, by supporting this bill, I think we are going to get to where we need to be. And this essentially is just a start. It is to ensure that we end the unnecessary criminalization of our young people. that we protect them against future misuse with education and knowledge critical, and that we respect religious freedom, and that the government of Grenada, at this day, hereso says and declare that cannabis is something that we intend to invest in and build up for the future benefits of our country and our people, Grenadians, Caribbeans, and Petit Martinicans the world over. So, Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I commend this bill, and I fully support its passage in this House here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member for St. George Northeast. And I now invite the Honorable Prime Minister to take the floor and make his contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and pleasant morning to pleasant morning to you, Mr. Speaker, and to members of the House, persons in the gallery. I take the opportunity, since it's my first time here for 2026, to wish everyone a healthy and successful 2026. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the passage of the bill through all stages in the House of Representatives for all of the reasons advanced by the leader of government business, if I may call him that, the minister with responsibility for cannabis, the member of parliament for St. Andrew Southwest. And I think, Mr. Speaker, I said to him, his presentation was well-researched, erudite, eloquent, passionate, persuasive, and demonstrates why, Mr. Speaker, that both himself and his team, the enormous work they've done on getting us here today. And so I join with commending the Cannabis Secretariat and the Cannabis Commission for the enormous work they've done in getting us to what I will call the first stage of establishing and creating a cannabis industry in Grenada, Carrickfergus, and Petit Martinique. And therefore, there still is a lot of work to be done, but we have to start somewhere. And Mr. Speaker, I hope, as the member for the town of St. George has said, that we have universal bipartisan support for this bill, because this is, while we brought the bill, Mr. Speaker, I think that there has to be a clear recognition that the trend to reverse decades of misinformation, deliberately so, stigmatization, criminalization of the marijuana plant, first and foremost, because it's just a plant, just like any other plant. And then the use or misuse of the plant, and the demons and non-demons that have been deliberately associated with it started quite some time ago. And the minister has already, and others have already singled out, in the context of the Caribbean, the Rastafarian community, for their unyielding, unwavering commitment to reversing this heresy. And it is a historic moment to be here this morning, and I'm proud to be part of a team that has gotten us to this first stage. And Mr. Speaker, sometimes we think there's never a plan, or that we are whooping, or that things are happening ad hoc. I want to emphasize that there's a plan, because the National Sustainable Development Plan, I always go back to it, the NSDP 2020 to 2035, has 12 references in it to marijuana. And it starts by indicating that what should happen is that a marijuana advisory committee should be formed or established to advise the state of Grenada on the path that should be taken to implement the recommendations of CARICOM's Marijuana Commission that was done in 2018. The Cannabis Secretariat that we formed and the Cannabis Committee that we formed, therefore, is a direct result of this. That's the first point I wish to make. Second, Mr. Speaker, we on this side, in 2022, in our manifesto to the public, made it clear that we would pursue the decriminalization of marijuana. We said, and I'm going to quote from that manifesto, driven by creativity and innovation, an NDC-led government will, bullet point 1, legalize cannabis and create a legal and regulatory framework for its production and sale. So this today, Mr. Speaker, is the commencement of a promise made and a promise kept. This was in 2022. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, there was, in fact, as the Member of Parliament for the town of St. George said, a draft bill entitled the exact same thing as this bill, a Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2021, then prepared by Attorney General Dia Forrester. That bill was circulated, Mr. Speaker, and for reasons that certainly I have not yet heard explained, it was not proceeded with. And I recall emphasizing in 2022, because I only got involved in public life in late 2021, that in fact the bill should be proceeded with. Because the criminalization of the use of marijuana as a policy, as a public policy, had clearly failed. And the evidence was overwhelming that it had failed. Mr. Speaker, there's a very tragic incident involving a young man who I know personally because he taught my son how to swim from St. George, Northwest, who was shot by the police and who effectively lost the use of his arm. And the stress arising from that incident escalated and led to the tragedy where his father attacked on the street in St. George some police officers. He eventually shot and killed him. And what did this stem from? The suspicion of either marijuana use or possession. So, Mr. Speaker, all around us, there are real tragedies. A national swimmer, a national coach who's teaching our children to swim. And simply because of the suspicion of either having in his possession a spliff, and I'm saying suspicion here because I don't know that it was ever confirmed, he was shot, lost the use of his arm. His father was so broken that his father erupted into violence. Police officers were injured, and the father himself lost his life over a public policy that had failed and was proven to be a failure. So this is not about whether persons have the right to take part in the case of religious purposes in a sacrament, or in the case of medicinal or therapeutical uses, medicine to heal or to abate pain, or whether for commercial or industrial purposes to be able to make products that have utility, or whether it is for personal entertainment or recreational use. The question is whether the public policy of criminalizing it works. And decades of it has shown that it has failed. So we either continue with bad policy, continue with the tragedies that I've just described, continue with the tragedies that my sister, the Member of Parliament for St. John, described, or we recognize that we must pivot and adopt a public policy that is more pragmatic, that addresses the social injustice that has been perpetrated on particular segments of our society for decades, and that we also recognize that there are opportunities for the commercial and industrial, medicinal, and therapeutic exploitation of a basic plant that grows wild. They call it weed for a reason. It grows very quickly. So, Mr. Speaker, yes, there's always the bright side and the dark side. We did not have an approach that said this is purely about recreational or purely about the social injustices that have been perpetrated on the Rastafarian community. We also recognize that there are serious medical risk and that there are serious societal challenges that exist whether or not the policy of continuing to criminalize the use of possession or having apparatus preparatory to the use or possession or cultivation of marijuana, that these things exist. That is why the Chief Medical Officer was a member of the committee. That is why the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Northwest, as the Minister for Mental Health and Well-being, would have argued passionately for saying, contrary to what I wished to pursue, that the age for permitting the use should be 21 and not 18. There was passionate debate. We went back and forth. I tend to sometimes be black and white. If you're an adult, you're an adult. 18 is 18. We recognize 18. You can drive, you can vote, you can get married. So from my perspective, at 18, you should be permitted if you so choose. But I was in the minority. And so I cede graciously to the medical experts, to the mental health advocates, who recognize that at 18, a brain is perhaps still developing. And so I say this to say, Mr. Speaker, because oftentimes we come in Parliament and I hear that there's been no consultation, and no consultation, and no consultation. Well, the consultation started first with CARICOM's own consultation, of which Grenada was part. It is reflected in our National Sustainable Development Plan. And there's an introductory address in that National Sustainable Development Plan by the former Prime Minister, former opposition leader, and Member of Parliament for St. George Northwest. So I hope he wouldn't say he doesn't know what's in his own plan. We advocated for it. The member of the town of St. George has said and gone on record that he advocated for it. The Cannabis Secretariat and Committee has had extensive consultations, town halls. The Rastafarian community itself has sought and obtained permission from the Commissioner of Police and the Minister of National Security to display the plant in public educational sessions. So if there is one bill that there has been widespread and extensive and prolonged, stretching over a decade, discussion, debate, and consultation on, is the question of the changing policy towards marijuana possession, cultivation, use for medicinal, therapeutic, recreational, religious, and sacramental purposes. Mr. Speaker, I want to emphasize that I've already given instructions, even though the bill has not yet gone through all of its stages, that we need to make the National Rehabilitation Offenders Board aware that the Act, this Act, explicitly amends the National Rehabilitation Offenders Board, and that the board is aware, given the statistics presented to us by the Minister with responsibility for marijuana, that at least 649 persons over the last 5 years have marijuana convictions. And I'm assuming a certain percentage of that is, in fact, for minor offenses and likely for persons who would have had in their possession, in the case of marijuana itself, 56 grams or less, in the case of the raisin, 15 grams or less, or who might have had some apparatus, whether it's a smoke pipe or something preparatory to cultivation or use, that they will be applying once the bill is enacted to have their records made clean. And therefore, we need to ensure that the board is properly aware and ready to treat with the applications that will come its way. I wish to emphasize that the Cannabis Secretariat is set up so that all and sundry, including members of Parliament, can have access to them, can make recommendations, and make suggestions as we go forward, particularly with phase 2, which is to actually craft the policy and the legislation that will create the framework for the marijuana industry. I hear the member for the town of St. George saying he wished he could be consulted with and he may have suggestions. Well, that is why the Cannabis Secretariat is set up. It is a public body. You can go to them. We cannot always come and bring things to you. We are accountable to the people, not you. You are accountable to the people too. Go to the Cannabis Secretariat, make your recommendations, make your suggestions, email them, call them, and give your input as to how we can craft the second phase, which is the actual creation of the industry, the licensing regime, the regulatory regime. And I too would openly confess that I too have a bias for saying that the Rastafarian community should be given preponderance of priority when it comes to the creation of the cannabis industry. Because merely expunging the record for minor possession of the plant or the resin or apparatus is not a sufficient atonement for the historical wrong that has been done to the Rastafarian community. So, Mr. Speaker, I do not wish to carry on much further. But it's important, I think, for the public to appreciate. And the Minister for Mental Health, Wellness, and the MP for St. Andrew Northwest, as well as the MP for St. John, and the Leader of Government Business, the MP for St. George Southeast, I think has been at pains to point out that we are not discounting, nor are we ignoring the risks associated particularly with recreational use of marijuana, and in particular on our young people. I do not smoke. I am not endorsing the recreational use of marijuana. But my personal beliefs or my personal behavior is not the basis for public policy making. Public policy making has to be based on data, what's in the best interest of the public, and how should the state allocate ever scarcer resources into areas of public impact. Spending large quantities of the state's resources, whether it's in the form of manpower, police officers, vehicles chasing other vehicles up and down the place, airport and seaport surveillance, simply to collect, arrest, prosecute, jail, fine, and then destroy large quantities of a plant is not an appropriate use of the state resources. So when the member for the town of St. George says, where will someone get the 56 grams? Our policy is comprehensive. That is why we are allowing you to grow up to 4 plants yourself. He was once the Minister of Agriculture. I believe, does that mean I have no time or I have 5 minutes, Mr. Speaker?
Means that your allotted 15 minutes has expired, so you may request additional time.
I did promise I wasn't going to go on for longer, so may I request 5 minutes, Mr. Speaker?
And
thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm making the point that the policy and the legislation is not enacted in silos. We recognize that if one wishes to have small quantities of marijuana for recreational use, they have to get it somewhere. Hence the reason why we've said you can grow your own. And I was making the point that the former Minister for Agriculture and member for the town of St. George would appreciate that you don't need, since he's been around many persons who I'm sure have been arrested and charged for marijuana, large amounts of soil to grow marijuana. You don't need to grow it outside anymore. They are grown in-house, greenhouses, etc., etc. So the policy thing here, Mr. Speaker, is that if persons can grow their own, they don't need to buy from anyone. So if you are in excess of the prescribed amount, it means you are trying to sell or trade. You are trying to take part in an industry that we will seek to create and regulate and license, but until that time, grow for your own consumption and use only. And if someone, the Rastafarian would be best placed to say whether 4 plants, how much grams it gives you. I suspect it is more than 56 grams. But if you are seeking to bring for a friend or a relative, you know the limit is 56 grams. So you should have no more than 56 grams on you. We have similarly decriminalized or seek to decriminalize the apparatus associated with the use of it, whether it's the pipe, etc., etc. We have sought to put in the legislation your right to import for medicinal therapeutic uses in circumstances where you are prescribed and permitted to do so. So we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that beyond the recreational use, beyond the sacramental use by the Rastafarian community, that we also have to permit persons who are genuinely using it for medicinal and therapeutic purposes, whether it's in the form of oils, whether it's in the form of medication, the opportunity to be able to bring in for their use in circumstances as prescribed by the legislation. We have made it clear, and I want to emphasize this, we are not condoning, supporting, and hence we have criminalized the public smoking of marijuana. You have your home, you have the homes of your friends. If you are to engage in the recreational use within the limits prescribed, do it in private. So when the Minister and the MP for St. Andrew Southwest point out that the police will have work to do still, there is still work to do. We've made it clear that we do not want, in addition to no public smoking or use, we do not want it around our educational facilities. And we do not want any unscrupulous persons targeting our young men and women. And I'm sure that the Cannabis Secretariat will spend significant time educating and emphasizing our young men and women about making healthy choices in relation to the use of marijuana. And it is important to point this out. Oftentimes when things are criminalized and driven on the wrong, and the black market is created, the quality, the circumstances, and the health implications become worse for the users. And so one of the advantages of seeking to decriminalize small quantities of marijuana and giving you the ability to grow it yourself is that you have greater control over what, if you so choose, what you choose to consume. In circumstances where it's coming from the black market, oftentimes it's laced with other products that are often quite dangerous and leads to even more dramatic and consequential negative health impacts on our users. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that there are some in our community who will still be uneasy about this policy shift. But we must be driven by actual data. We can go to Antigua, we can go to St. Kitts and Nevis, we can go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, other countries which have already begun the policy shift, and we can assess whether the societies are falling apart or not. They are not. And so the data is there to show that this policy shift, when done in a measured, responsible, empathetic, and data-driven manner, is a policy shift whose time has come. And I view this, Mr. Speaker, as the courage to finally begin to tackle an issue that has dogged us for decades, which I think we all knew instinctively, and I would even say morally, was a wrong public policy, but which we simply did not have the courage to do. So the decriminalization of marijuana is an idea whose time has come, and I am indeed happy to commend the bill to members of this House and to the public, and for the public to continue to engage in the discussion and the debate about this matter as we seek to pass the bill and then move to implementation into law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to colleague members.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. And I now invite the Leader of the Opposition to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution on the bill that is before us this morning, well, we should be in afternoon now, and to say that I deliberately did not interrupt the government side in their presentations on this bill. And to go further to say, Mr. Speaker, that one of the things that characterizes this side of the House is that we don't flip-flop on policies. We don't flip-flop on critical issues that we take positions on. So I heard, Mr. Speaker, earlier that this was a thought, this was an idea, but I want to bring a bit of clarity to say that the New National Party administration, as may have been hinted, brought to this House for first reading a bill in exactly the same name as the current bill before us. Mr. Speaker, our position on this matter has not changed. So whether it has to do with use for medicinal purposes, whether it has to do with religious purposes and all of that, we discussed, we debated. But one fundamental thing is that we felt that a significant shift as this one needed to have the necessary widespread consultation with the people of this country. And so what we did was to bring this bill for first reading only in 2022 and subject it to serious consultation at all levels, including all critical stakeholders, to decide on the next step that government should take. Mr. Speaker, we left office in 2022. And so I would expect that the natural thing that would happen is that the consultation and all of the engagements on this particular bill that already came to this House would have continued and at some point return in this House for continued decision on the matter. Mr. Speaker, I got a little bit confused when the member for St. David's made reference to decriminalization and then went on to refer to the manifesto and said legalization. And then he said promise made, promise kept. I got a little bit confused there. Because, Mr. Speaker, we can't be saying decriminalize and legalize and mean the same thing. We ought to be able to provide clear, except we're intending to confuse people. But, Mr. Speaker, why I said we don't flip-flop. In the last campaign leading to the last general election, our position was extremely clear. Decriminalization. The now government promoted legalization because they felt we were too conservative. So, Speaker, I'm happy to see that the process that has led us to what is happening today is one that I believe where judgment did not go off the edge with politics and with passion. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, whatever we do, while we are politicians, we have to remember that every decision we make, every intention that we have must be grounded in what is best for the nation at the particular time. And that whatever we do, Mr. Speaker, it must be done in such a way that we don't solve a problem, creating a bigger problem. And so we always have to be mindful of this. And that is why I say consistency on position. You can judge the New National Party by this. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I would have expected to hear a lot more as it relates to the implementation plans surrounding this very critical issue. Some very vague references were made. That worries me. Because if we're not clear on where we are going and how we are getting there, we can have problems along the way. We cannot trivialize this issue, Mr. Speaker, because the presentations before clearly highlighted the serious consequences, the serious possibilities that can arise from the misuse and abuse of marijuana. So whatever we do, we have to do it with a level of consciousness that we have lives to protect in the process. That this is too serious to just tick a box and not have a serious framework and plan in place to protect the lives, particularly, Mr. Speaker, of our children and our young people. So let us not get high and excited without thinking of a serious plan of protection. So, Mr. Speaker, reference was made to what happens when a child is found with marijuana. Reference was made to what happens when a child is found using marijuana. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to hear this morning, what are some of the guardrails that are going to be put in place to prevent? Because, you know, the sad story would be when that child is found long after they started using the substance. And I didn't need to say it, it was said by the government side. The serious problems, medical, psychological, and other challenges that an individual can be affected by, the consequences, the challenges as it relates to brain development. Mr. Speaker, we ought not to trivialize this. And so while, Mr. Speaker, I have no reservation as it relates to religious purposes. I remember visiting an Abingi tabernacle some years ago, and the extent and passion they went to explain why this needed to be considered for sacramental purposes. Mr. Speaker, I searched through the definitions, and until now, it is not clear who is considered a Rastafarian, what qualifies you, right? And at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, we want to ensure that if we are putting things within the law, we want to be able to be guided by the law. And I'm just saying this to say, whether it's medical, whether it's religious, we want to make sure that we protect the groups. So we protect the Rastafarian, we protect the people with medical conditions, we ensure that the law protects them, and that we don't have a loophole where a child, for example, or a young person, for example, is seriously exposed as a secondary user. So, Mr. Speaker, the education plan, and reference was made of that. The plan as it relates to organization, where it comes to drug and drug abuse, etc., reference was also made of that. But, Mr. Speaker, I would love to see us go a little deeper into specifics. So, for example, there was reference in the bill to a national organization. Do we have it yet? Is it functioning? Are we going to set it up? Because, as I said, the beneficiaries, those who are going to benefit from this, we want to make sure, as I said, we protect particularly our children and our young ones. So how soon are we planning to have these systems that we spoke about as it relates to protection? So we have reform plus protection simultaneously. And I would hope that we hasten to ensure that all of those are in place to ensure that we drive this forward. Mr. Speaker, the final point I wish to make on this is as it relates to the economic impact. There's obviously no doubt, as I said before, that there are economic benefits that can come from this. But again, Mr. Speaker, all of what has been articulated, stated, whether it's in the National Sustainable Plan, wherever it has been articulated clearly, what has been contained within documents of research in other places, Mr. Speaker, reference was made to Canada. And I just want to close by making this fundamental point. It's one thing to refer to another jurisdiction or another place where this has been taken to the point that it contributes to national development, economic development. But unless we have the systems, the structures, unless we put those things in place, Mr. Speaker, it would remain but a dream. And so, if we are talking about economic impact, the research, the assessment, ensuring that we do the groundwork, Mr. Speaker, and not just to look at it from the perspective of a conversation, Mr. Speaker, I hasten to say that there's still a lot of work to be done, and I encourage those who are involved to do this with one fundamental thought in mind, that we do reform, but we protect at the same time. Because we must do nothing that at the end of the day, Grenada suffers, our children suffer. And so we want to make sure whatever is done, it's done well. And so, Mr. Speaker, I rest my case to say that I support the passage of this bill, but I'm very concerned that in the presentations before, we have not had sufficient evidence that we are ready to push this ahead in its current state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader of His Majesty Opposition. And is it I think the light of the MP for St. George Northwest. Now turn the floor over to you, Honorable MP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's clear from all that I've heard this morning from both sides of this honorable House that clearly the question of support of this bill is what everyone wishes to have done. In other words, clearly we on this side of the House, like the government side, support the initiative here today and the bill. So I just want, Mr. Speaker, therefore, to make it clear that our side of this House has consistently supported the decriminalization of marijuana. In fact, as it was really said on both sides, some members, that similar legislation was brought for first reading before the 2022 general elections. I recall vividly that this government, present government, did campaign on the legalization of marijuana. However, Mr. Speaker, legalization and decriminalization are two fundamentally different things. While the rhetoric of the legislation was another campaign issue, we do in fact applaud the government for finally coming to terms with what should actually be done and bringing this bill at its core that would align itself with the principles of decriminalization. We also note, Mr. Speaker, that this bill goes further than the one we proposed for discussion, particularly in introducing industrialization aspects of the cannabis industry. So these are all positive things, Mr. Speaker, encompassing medicinal, therapeutic, scientific purposes as detailed in clauses 4, 10, and the new section 13D. Mr. Speaker, while we commend the steps taken towards decriminalization, rather than the campaign promise of the legalization, we would like to caution the government on two main points. If not managed with extreme diligence and foresight, as was said by the leader of the opposition, we can have problems. So the question is, how do we go forward? In the management of this thing, and all of us should wish it be done in a way to the end product would be in the best interests of the country for those who use and those who do not use it, because the effect will affect all concerned in the country. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of de-risking from international banks is something that we have to watch. I make this point. Like many other small island developing states in SIDS, Grenada faces significant challenges from de-risking by the international financial institutions. Because cannabis remains, in a general sense, Mr. Speaker, from a national perspective, in major financial hubs like the United States. Local banks in Grenada risk losing crucial correspondent banking relationships if they handle funds related to the cannabis industry. In other words, the same work still needs to be done. That's the point. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is clear that the present danger that we face can cripple our financial sector if it's not handled properly. Such a situation inevitably creates a high cash environment, complicating tax collection efforts, and posing substantial risks to business security. We didn't hear much about that today, but I'm raising this because I think it's important. The success of any cannabis industry, therefore, well regulated or otherwise, hinges on its ability to access the banking services and integrate into a broader financial system. Without a clear pathway to address this, we risk creating a shadow economy ripe for illicit activities and undermining the very goals that this bill, which is well-intentioned, meant to be. Secondly, the issue of conflict with international drug control treaties. I make this point, another one I hardly heard anything about. Mr. Speaker, Grenada's shift towards decriminalization for non-medical use, as evident in the decriminalized quantities for personal use, specified in the 8th schedule, and the explicit allowance for religious purposes under Section 13A can directly conflict with our obligations under international drug control treaties. This is critical important. Specifically, the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotics Drugs mandates that cannabis use be limited to medical and scientific purposes only. Navigating these international obligations while pursuing a national reform is a complex diplomatic and legal task. Mr. Speaker, we have all seen the diplomatic skills of this government in full display on various fronts, and regrettably, the consequences have not been so good. The potential repercussions of mishandling our international standing on this issue, risking diplomatic isolation or even sanctions, cannot therefore be underestimated. These are just warning, Mr. Speaker, and that's how it should be taken. This requires, therefore, sophisticated legal and diplomatic strategizing, something we urge the government to address as we go forward with serious importance. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, while the bill addresses public use, Section 13B and 13C, and includes fixed penalties for public smoking, I must suggest the critical inclusion of driving under the influence clause and associated penalties in this bill. I think it should be addressed. This is a glaring omission. The safety of our roads and our citizens must be paramount, as was proposed in the bill submitted by the previous government. Comprehensive provisions for identifying, prosecuting, and penalizing individuals who operate vehicles under the influence of cannabis, therefore, is essential. So, Speaker, the point all this is saying is, you know, I've heard a lot of issues raised today, both sides. And I'm raising these additional issues because I think they're all very important. And then both sides of the House made those key points today on several aspects and the necessity why this must come before us. But I'm making this additional point because I think they're critical as we go forward. But as for me, Mr. Speaker, I don't smoke. Never smoke a cigarette. And therefore, there is no need. Some friends of mine who are studying university to come to me and say, take a pull. So I used to say, well, I don't. What is this? And then they tell me what it is. I say, well, you have to go from one stage to the next. Since I don't take cigarette, I don't see why I should go to stage 2. So I make this point for what Mr. Speaker, as I end my short presentation here, to say that I'm happy that it's the twilight of my period in this sojourn and political activity, that we are dealing with a crucial issue and bringing before this House an important issue which affects the population as a whole. So it's not about those who use the cannabis, or who do not use it, because everyone could be affected one way or the other. So I'm very happy that as I come to the end of my political career, this bill is coming forward, and I had the opportunity to be part of the passage of this important bill. So I want to compliment all members who are here and supporting this and bringing this, but I urge in going forward, to make sure that we touch all bases, because helping and making sure things are implemented properly will be critical for the country as a whole as we move forward. I wish us all the best as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank Thank you to Honorable MP for the constituency of St. George Northwest. You have government business?
Thank you, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry. For the constituency of St. Mark?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too wish to make my contribution, albeit small, to this very important discussion and this very important bill that is being discussed here today, and to say how very pleased I am that it has come to this stage. Mr. Speaker, as was said by various members, this process started a long time ago. And the fact is that it was started and that the new National Party administration played a role. And so no amount of rhetoric can eradicate the importance of what was done at that particular time. And so we must not seek to discredit what was done before, because building on what was started before, if there's a foundation, it's easy. You can't start doing a roof just in the air. There has to be a foundation, and one wants to ensure that it is a solid foundation. And I'm sure all of us in this honorable house, we care about the youths. No matter what anybody says and no matter what anybody else may have done more for, we all care about the youths. And we care about different groups of persons, different demographics, the Rastafarians and others, the sick persons who need the medication. I too have had my experience with, not personal, but have had experience with persons needing certain medical intervention in which cannabis would have had to play a role because nothing else seemed to work. So we know, and the data and all of the readings would show us the importance for medical purposes, for identifying and rehabilitating persons who are affected in one way or the other, because like most other medications, they do have side effects. And one, we must make the side effects clear to the users, and I think presenters before, a number of persons on the other side, would have made some of the fallout clear and the need for appropriate interventions. So I will not go too much into it. The presenter of the bill, the member for St. George Southeast, would have been very elaborate in that. But Mr. Speaker, I cannot live without making a few comments. One, I just want to underscore that I am proud of the role the new National Party would have taken in starting of this process, and I'm happy to see that it was continued, whether the pace would have escalated or it would have been steady. Whatever positive role persons would have taken, it is all for the benefit of the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. I remember, and I don't know if that still exists, but our government would have made some lands available for a group of Rastafarians right in St. Mark. That was done. And so perhaps the Minister for Agriculture could check the history. So it's not any one person's territory. We have to be, in order to be here, one has to care about the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, no matter what. And so all of us play our role. Mr. Speaker, the issue of after Hurricane Ivan and 22 years, I just want to make a contribution to that. Because the last hurricane that we had, Beryl, it devastated Karakum. But by and large, the mainland remained intact. That, and all due respects to the representative for Karakum and Petit Martinique, and to the people of Karakum, they know that we love them and care about us. I am a half Kakabawi. But the point is, it does not compare to the level of devastation that we had after Ivan. And so, a number of things may have had to be put on the back burner, but I know one of the things that the new National Party did was to repair, renovate, and expand the General Hospital over the past years, and it's not 22 years, let's check it out. 2004 to now, it was not NNP alone. So the maths was correct, but I think the blame game was a little bit misplaced because NNP was not in office from 2004 to 2026. But my purpose here is not to lay the blame, but just to correct so that we can check the maths and see what happened when. So if after a time of crisis and some delay in dealing with anything, a private entity comes up and offers some fund, that will happen under NNP, it will happen under NDC, it will happen because I have heard in this honorable house, there have been donations from private entities, from governments, from other organizations, and we welcome it. But let us not let that trivialize what other governments would have done. That doesn't make any side bigger because we engage in a rhetoric that says we are the ones that move things. Because NNP in its own right has done quite a lot for Grenada, Karakum, and Petit Martinique, be it infrastructure, be it education, whatever, we have done our part. So, Mr. Speaker, the history would show where the consultation started and what went on, and we're happy for that. The history would show that we have supported this bill, and I rose to make sure that my voice was heard in support of this bill because I think it is absolutely necessary and important, and it's a great start. But the journey now starts because the bill says that the minister will be, I'm not sure which minister, whether it's the Minister for Health who has presented the bill or the Minister for Agriculture, but it says that the minister will ensure that there are regulations, that the proper structures are put in place to protect all of the different aspects of the legislation that would have been spoken, because beautiful words, beautiful commitments, but if we do not put the structures in place, with all due respect, a minister alone cannot do it. So whatever entities would have been involved in consultations, and I heard a number of groups called, the Rastafarian, others, so be it, kudos to everyone who was there. But we have to ensure that whatever the spirit of this legislation is, we have to ensure that the structures, whether it's the Child Protection Authority, do we have enough staff in there? Do we have enough counselors for the onslaught? Because I've heard numbers, hundreds who have been taken up by the police and so, that we would want to protect. And so we have to ensure that our Minister for Health ensures that there's enough staffing. Medication may have to be used so that our minister and the government will ensure that there is the medication, the counseling, whatever the guidance, and the education for those people are right in place. We on this side are not usually engaged or consulted on that, but I'm sure we'd be willing, and I haven't spoken to the leader of the opposition as yet on that matter, but in general discussions, we have all expressed our willingness to be part of whatever the process is. So we would love to be engaged. This is of national importance, and we would do our part, whatever little bit of knowledge, whatever contribution we can make, we would love to make it. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have no hesitation in my full support for the bill. I would just love to see the next step where serious committees, knowledgeable committees are put in place so that we don't miss too much of a step, so that we fall back to where we were. And I commend those who all nationally, the government, for bringing this bill in a timely manner. Some might say it's a bit late, but whatever it is, we are here to help. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you to Honorable MP for the constituency of St. Mark. Leader of the government business.
I'm just wanting to, in concluding the discussion on the bill, express my appreciation, my deep appreciation to members on both sides of the House for their contribution towards this debate. Truly, knowledge is power, and today we had a very good exchange of knowledge on both sides, and I think it only augurs well for the development of the legislative and the policy frameworks around this very important policy item. So thank you again, Mr. Speaker, and I commend the bill.
Thank you very much, Leader of Government Business. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026.
Of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider this bill clause by clause. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. All those in favour, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 2, amendment of Section 2 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 2 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 3, amendment of Section 4 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 3 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 4, amendment of Section 5 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 4 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 5, amendment of Section 6 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 5 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 6, insertion of Section 6A in the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 6 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 7, amendment of Section 7 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 7 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Clause 8, amendment of Section 9 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 8 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 9, amendment of Section 10 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 9 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Clause 10, amendment of Section 11 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 10 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Clause 11, insertion of new sections 13A, 13B, 13C, 13D, and 13E of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 11 forms part of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. Indeed, the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 12, amendment of Section 21 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 12 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Clause 13, insertion of Section 53 of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 13 forms part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Clause 14, amendment of second schedule of the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 14 forms part of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 15, amendment of fifth schedule to the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 15 forms part of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Clause 16, insertion of new schedules in the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 16 forms part of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Clause 17, consequential amendment to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 17 forms part of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Honourable members, the question is that schedule forms part of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Chairman. I beg to move that the House resumes and the Chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that the House resumes and that the Chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it. This Honourable House now resumes. Honourable members, I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment. The Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
Honourable members, the question is that the chairman's report be adopted. All those in favour, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Speaker, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and pass. All those in favour say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Amendment Bill 2026.
Item number 16, request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Item number 17, public business.
Leader of Government Business.
Speaker, I beg to move that this honorable House be adjourned sine die. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House be adjourned sine die. All those in favour, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it indeed, the ayes have it. This Honourable House now stands adjourned sine die.